Podcasting can be bad. Podcasting can be bad news. Podcasting can be good news. Podcasting is a bad idea. Podcasting is a difficult podcasting is a scary podcasting is a bitter herb. Podcasting is a dangerous tunnel. When you get out of that tunnel, you've got bitter herbs.
This is good.
Forget herb,
like
David.
That.
I never heard a hit podcast that had the word herb in it.
Herb. I say herb sometimes because that's what the Brits say.
Yeah.
And that I get raked over the coals anytime I accidentally say herb. That one really amuses people. Ugh. Anyway, that was great, Griffin.
Thank you. I practice it with even more stammering, and I got nervous. I didn't want to get too self-indulgent.
Right.
But this is for me. Get ready. I'm not going to argue this is a perfect film. It is hard to argue this is a perfect film, but this is a movie.
Perfect would be that. That's no one needs to be saying that. You can love the movie, right?
Yes, this is a movie I adore so deeply in so many ways. And one thing I will say about it, a hyperbolic statement right off the bat. I think this is one of the funniest openings of any movie ever. I don't think there is another movie that arguably gets this many laughs in the opening credits.
Here's my only problem with the opening. It's so good.
I agree.
That you're like, what do you mean people don't like this thing? And then like by the middle, you're like, okay, well, I can see how maybe this movie threw people a little bit. Now, I like the movie, but you know what I mean? Like the opening, you're just like, oh, baby.
It made me think of Stripes.
It is, yes.
You know
absolutely.
what I mean? It's got that same kind of problem where you like it sets a certain tone or pace or feel, and then it's like, oh, actually, we're gonna pivot to a completely different movie.
This is my thing. Like you guys know, I talked about it a lot. Maybe someday we'll cover it. Sidney Lumet's The Wiz is one of my 10 favorite movies of all time. It is also another deeply imperfect box office fiasco that was raked over the coals when it came out, right?
Sure.
And I love it, despite the fact that I think about conservatively 50 minutes of it are unwatchable, right? Because it's like the stuff that works in it for me works in such a unique way that's different from any other film that I'm willing to forgive the parts of it that just like actively repulse me. And there's nothing in Ishtar that like feels as catastrophic as the 12-minute let's change what the color in Emerald City sequence is in The Wiz. But similarly, the first 22 minutes of this movie, I like as much as I like any stretch in any comedy film ever. And it sets the bar so high that then the Ishtar stuff, which I defend, it's just inarguably not as good as just Rogers and Clark fucking writing songs together.
Yeah. Just we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. But that's the
podcasting can be dangerous. No. And just anytime they do that, I'm such a sucker for the like. No. You know what it is? It's a. It's no. It could be good. Could be bad news. It's a bad predicament. Folks, we're here. This is one of those movies I've dreamed talking about since we started this podcast.
Yes, this is a movie we have talked about since before the podcast started, basically. Yeah, the whole time.
Because it is obviously just one of the biggest blank checks in Hollywood history and one of the most famous sort of like example movies in terms of its reputation, but also is a movie that I have always defended since I saw it 10 years ago for the first time and was astonished because I thought it was just going to be garbage. I just assumed it was going to be straight garbage. And then...
you knew it as the Far Side cartoon.
Yeah.
The video store from hell where they only have Ishtar. It was the butt of joke. You learn
right.
Like when you're 5 years old and you learn how to tie your shoes, you also learn like, and Ishtar is a famously bad movie. Like, and you're like, oh, yes. okay, Ishtar, I get it.
I was talking about it with my sister Romley the other day, and she was like, Elaine May made movies? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, what movies did she direct? And I just said like Heartbreak Kid, Mikey and Nicky, New Leaf, just dead silence on the other end of the phone. I said Ishtar. And she goes, oh, I know Ishtar.
Right. The word she knows.
Even a 23-year-old understands that Ishtar is synonymous with fiasco. Yes. But I saw this, Elaine May. Well, we'll get into this because let's say what this is. This is a podcast about filmographies. I keep on making this mistake where I say the one thing before the other thing. Okay. It's a podcast called Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
Tightening up that response time a little bit.
Okay. Look, I think it's mostly just a slight Zoom delay, but Griff, did you see this meme in the Reddit?
It's so funny. One of the funniest things our Reddit has ever done.
And cut this out if it's embarrassing that I didn't get it. Who is it? I couldn't put it together in my head who I'm supposed to be here.
Is it about Schmidt? I couldn't identify what movie it is.
Okay, but you just thought it was funny anyway. It is funny.
The meme is like a 4-panel comic strip of the Joe Bowen David cartoon face superimposed over the body of a live-action man in 3 different casual positions. He's like sitting on a bench. He's walking down a street. And then the 4th panel just says, "And I'm David."
Yes.
And
I take too long.
It's you taking your leisurely time to get to your name. Yeah.
Okay, that's it. I was just like, I was just trying to figure out if there was some deeper reference. That's all. Okay, carry on. I'm sorry for slowing you down. We need to get to our guest.
You were trying to take that meme down Ishtar style. You were like the press. You had your knives out. It was an assassination attempt. It was attempted coup. And the fact that it was unsuccessful doesn't mean we shouldn't be taking it seriously.
It was the most upvoted post of all time on our subreddit.
Yeah, it's a great joke. It's a perfect joke. It's the Reddit of Ishtar jokes. It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce baby. Here's a perfect case study of that exact phenomenon. Here's
the most famous bounce. Yeah, the big career.
Huge career before making films, makes 2 hits, and then makes 2 colossal failures.
But like Mikey and Nikki is a financial disappointment, but this is a world famous bomb. This is one of the most famous bombs. This is at a whole other level.
If it weren't for Ishtar, we would say like, oh, Mikey and Nikki is a huge bounce. It's just
that
Ishtar
buried her, right.
redefines what a bounce could be. We're of course talking about Elaine May, the great Elaine May. We've gotten to what is, unfortunately, as of this moment, her 4th and final film, although hopefully she makes, I keep on forgetting what it's called.
Crackpot, supposedly, is what her final, or her next, movie will be called, but shrug, who knows?
Fingers crossed. It, of course, is a miniseries called The Pod Break Cast, but it was almost called Podcashtar, because today we're talking about Ishtar. Now, our guest is being so polite.
So good.
Almost too good.
We don't want him to be good. We want him to be bad.
We want him to be a bad boy.
Do you know how hard it is to not jump in?
That's why I want you to interject.
That's a Travis McElroy move.
Well, I mean, all right.
I can't. There's no way that Travis sat quietly before you said his name, introduced him when he was.
No,
definitely not. And
me?
like that's the whole thing. Like it's just burst on in. I don't want anyone feeling, pent up.
Okay, good. Well, then I can say, do you know Gary Larson apologized?
I do.
It's the only time he's ever apologized for one of his comic strips.
Of all the things he's done, he said, that's the one I regret because I did it without ever seeing Ishtar, which I think plays to the whole... I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Get into it!
I'm in the water.
Our guest today is Clint McElroy. Let's just say Clint McElroy from the Adventure Zone.
Yay! Oh, wait, sorry. I cheered myself.
Hey, you deserve it.
I had one of those, Far Side anniversary books where like Gary Larson offers commentary, right?
Oh, really?
And I remember him apologizing. He apologizes where he's like, "I watched Ishtar. It's good." Like,
can I read his apology?
Yes, it's very good. Read it properly. Yes.
So it's just Hell's Video Store, and the entire store is stocked with nothing but copies of Ishtar, right? That's the whole joke.
It's not his best work. I'm going to say this actually. Beyond not liking Ishtar or liking Ishtar, I love Gary Larson. That one's a 5.
Not enough cows. But he writes, when I drew the above cartoon, I had not actually seen Ishtar. Years later, I saw it on an airplane and was stunned at what was happening to me. I was actually being entertained. Sure, maybe it's not the greatest film ever made, but my cartoon was way off the mark. There are so many cartoons for which I should probably write an apology, but this is the only one which compels me to do so. I do think that's kind of at the root of the entire thing, as you were saying, Clint.
Yeah, that's so relative to it, because just like you were mentioning that your sister
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Ishtar. I know Ishtar, and I think that was what it was. It to me, it's the first time I can ever remember, because I mean, obviously, I was alive when the movie came out. I was alive. I wasn't cognizant of what was going on. No, and it's the first time I can ever remember reviews that started, ended, and in the middle of focused on the budget. Oh, it costs so much money to make. Oh, it costs. It wasn't until like reviews of Titanic that I can ever remember, but this was early on.
Waterworld, maybe that's about it. Like it's that rare thing where it becomes the public discourse for ordinary people walking into the theater. Is like, I heard this thing cost a fortune, and I get if you watch this movie being told it cost a fortune, you might be like, it did. Yeah. Like what? Why did this cost a fortune? I get that they went to the Middle East, but I mean it's North Africa. But like, what the fuck?
The whole story about that framing is so fascinating. But let's also just say, David, Waterworld comes out like 8 years after this, right? 9 years after this? It's 95 or 96?
Sure, yeah, mid-90s. What is it?
Yeah. And when the press was writing about Waterworld going over budget and over schedule, they called it Fishtar.
Well, that's funny.
It's great. I gave them 5 comedy points, but the shadow of Ishtar was so large.
They did also call it Kevin's Gate, of course. Oh, no, that was Dances with Wolves. They called Kevin's Gate, right? Yeah,
because Costner was in a similar position to Beatty, one could argue, where they were like, "We're just ready for you to fucking fail, you egomaniac."
Yeah, you hot asshole. You think you can make movies and star in them and win Oscars? Yeah, we're coming for you, buddy.
Yes.
And then Dances with Wolves, is a huge hit. Then they're like, well, all right, you got away with that one, but we're still watching you, buddy.
And I think one of the great crimes of Ishtar and the way it was handled and the way it was treated was that, to me, a lot of, and like you, I love this movie. Yeah. There are things about this movie that are some of the funniest gags, some of the funniest scenes I have ever seen. But the fact that the failure was laid on Elaine May and that she paid the price for it, it seems.
Right.
When I think a lot of the problem should have been dolloped on Warren Beatty.
Yep.
And so that's what makes me a little crazy. I think that she made some mistakes. I think that but the whole, and I'm sure we're going to get into this, but the whole concept of the movie, to me, the first half an hour of it is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Agreed.
It's brilliant.
That's exactly what I say to people. Let's also just say, Clint, this might be the longest we have had an episode with a guest on the spreadsheet, because it was New York Comic Con 2019.
Oh, I remember those days.
Yeah, I think it's fully like 18 months ago that we like figured this out.
Right.
Yes.
It was like September or October 2019. I think September. And I had done the Adventure Zone panel with you guys. And then Travis threw like a little party afterwards. And it was your first time meeting David.
That's right.
And you came up to us at the bar and said, guys, you've had all 3 of my sons on. When am I going to get to come on Blank Check? And we said, here are the things we have planned for the next whatever we had on the books at that point in time. We thought we were going to do Elaine May April 2020.
What happened?
2 things happened, which we've gone over too many times. One, we wanted to do this March Madness bracket where it was Razzie winners versus Oscar winners. And Elaine May was the only female who fit into either bracket who we hadn't covered already. So we had to take her
Wins
out.
a Razzie for this here movie.
For this movie, right. So we were like, we have to put her in competition. Otherwise, it's going to be even more of a sausage fest than it already is. And also, there was this announcement, or not even announcement, this whisper, maybe she's going to make a new movie with Dakota Johnson. And we said, maybe let's wait and see if she makes this new movie. Then a global pandemic happened, and we were like, maybe let's not wait. Who knows when movies are going to be made?
There was a global pandemic?
Clint, I'm sorry, spoilers. I know.
I hate to break this to you.
I forgot that you're behind.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Ohio, so we don't know what's going on. This movie, absolutely, I can remember when it came out, and I am going to own up to my own guilt. I have had a sense of guilt about this movie because I did not go see it in theaters.
Oh, boy.
Now, here's the thing. I was hooked and I was ready because I loved the Hope Crosby road pictures. Loved the road pictures. After the Marx Brothers, my favorite series of movies were Hope and Crosby. Road to Morocco, Road to Singapore, Road to Utopia, all that. Absolutely loved them. And then, I had read she's doing a road picture. And I thought, this is awesome. And I am owning up to the fact that I saw those reviews and I caved. I was a coward.
Don't cry. It's okay.
Listen,
no, it's fine.
Come on, I'm trying to be sincere here.
No, this is working.
But I mean, I was fortunate in the fact that because it did not run on DVD for years and years and years and years. I mean, they didn't reissue it.
It was never released on DVD. It was barely on VHS. It was almost never played on television. It was played
VHS,
so rarely.
VHS is where I saw it.
Yeah.
And so it was a revelation to me. And it really, the effect that it had on me at that point was, saying, God, movie reviewers stink. That's terrible.
Tell me about it.
Let me tell you a quick anecdote, a quick story.
Is it about how all movie critics are scum? Because I'm ready to agree with you.
No, but I will tell you this. We had a local guy. This is when I was going to Marshall University. And the Wrath of Khan came out.
Great movie.
And so I had to go see that opening night. And so there was a local reviewer who hated it. And so I couldn't go opening night, but I was planning on going on that Saturday. So I picked up the Saturday morning paper, and you talk about spoilers. And so I opened this guy's column, and he says, here's how much I hated Star Trek Wrath of Khan. Spock dies.
What?
Oh my God. You can't
Spock
do that.
dies was the second line of his freaking review.
Wow.
Was that why he was so mad at the movie? He was just like, you can't do this.
He just went on to talk about the bad performances and how hokey it was and the overacting and obviously not getting it. But that's fine. If a reviewer has an opinion, that's fine. But that to me was criminally irresponsible.
Yes.
Yeah, that's mean. You can't do that.
And I think fitting that fits in with, how my reaction to when I finally saw Ishtar was, man, why did people destroy this movie the way they did?
That was my same reaction. And I'll say when we at that bar 18 months ago when society was still standing, gave you
before the fall,
gave you a bunch of options of like, would any of these movies jump out to you? You kind of like said like, ooh, Ishtar. Like when we said Ishtar, you went like Ishtar, and I went like, Clint, if you want to do Ishtar, Ishtar is yours. And you kind of looked like both ways around the bar, and then said like, but I'm gonna defend it. Like you were already sort of like feeling guilty of just like, are you guys looking for someone to shit on Ishtar? And I was like, Clint, you're booked. It's official. If you're ready to defend Ishtar, even if it takes us 18 months, the episode is on the books.
Sold. I'll do that. And I can remember when you asked me that, and I can remember my reaction to it.
Yeah.
And I will be brutally honest.
Like, are you on the level? No, yeah, go ahead.
As much as I know Elaine May and love Elaine May, I thought, really? A blank check? Did she get a blank check for Heartbreak Kid? And for, and so I think that was me trying to fit that into, knowing about the premise of the show too. But she absolutely deserved it. And I hope she does make another movie, because I would hate to think that Ishtar is the thing that, canceled her blank check. So
it was undeniably
a
very long hold. This movie came out when I was 1 year old. And but obviously she recovered her career with ease, not with ease, but with, like she keeps writing. She gets another Oscar nomination. She acts, she gets a Tony,
right.
There's lots of stuff that she does, but it's the last movie she made. And it is too bad in a way. As much as I like the movie.
Let's lay out some of the the formation of this movie, she sort of lays low after Mikey and Nikki. That kind of wipes her out, and I think that was the first time she had the attitude of, it's just not worth it. Movie making is such a pain in the ass.
Not worth it to direct.
Right. So she's, still doing plays. I think that's always been her sort of safe space of, they don't fuck with my words here. I can get stuff up. The overhead is much lower. I have less egos to deal with. She's got Julian Schlossberg who helps her with those. And then she does a lot of rewrite work. And sometimes it's credited and very often it's uncredited. But one of the big ones was Heaven Can Wait.
Heaven Can Wait is the only one that is credited, and she gets an Oscar nomination, of course. She's also in California Suite, I will point out, which she's very funny in. It's not a movie that I love, but she is very funny, and her and Walter Matthau's section of California Suite is the best section.
Hard agree. But she's this sort of like whisperer of, the elites of Hollywood who are still kind of keeping her employed because they have so much respect for her. Beatty, chief among them. So Beatty also has her do a pass on Reds. He has her sit in the editing suite with him a lot during post-production. He really credits her with helping that movie come together, helping him figure out the structure of that movie and everything. She also does a heavy uncredited rewrite on Tootsie. So Hoffman has this sort of sense of owing her a favor. There are a lot of stories like that of movies that were kind of teetering on the edge, could have collapsed into madness, where Elaine May comes in and fixes them at the last second.
What was the movie we were talking about where she came in and she was like, this movie's good?
A Swing Shift. They wanted her...
Swing Shift, that's right.
...to write the reshoots for Swing Shift, and she had her famous line that is so good, where she said, if you reshoot this movie in this way, you will disrupt the entire ecosystem of the film.
Right.
Which we just think about all the time. She's someone, and I think it speaks to what makes her good as a director, where it's just like, all of her movies have a very well-maintained ecosystem. They are very much in tune with themselves. On one hand, I understand people dislike Ishtar because it's just like, if you're just not in on the first page, it's never going to win you over, right?
I think also, apart from the fact that people were going in being told, boy, is this thing a stinker. Like, she has her famous line, if everyone who hated Ishtar had actually seen it, I'd be a rich woman, right? Like, a lot. But I do think you can boil it down as like, hey, they're these dumb lounge singers who are, they get caught up in like a CIA. Like, you can try to explain what Ishtar is about, but I do think the movie takes a long time to reveal itself so you're just sort of puzzled by it for so much of the running time.
Yes,
maybe I'm just trying to understand why it was so noxious, apart from we will talk about all the sort of like press stuff that helped.
But another key detail is that at this point in time in particular, both Beatty and Hoffman work very infrequently,
especially Beatty. Right.
This is an era where a major movie star cannot make a movie for 7 years and still be considered one of the biggest movie stars. The world is just waiting for them to return.
Beatty is the king of that. The biggest one of all. Right. Yes.
Right. But also this is the period where Hoffman takes his longest leave of absence. He doesn't make anything between Tootsie and Ishtar, which is 82 to 87. He just does Death of a Salesman.
Which I guess was pretty major and was on Broadway and all that. But yes, much like Pacino took a break like that in the 80s. I don't know if De Niro ever did. I guess he's the sort of...
De Niro kind of kept working. But yeah, James Caan took that long break. Hoffman, Pacino, Beatty.
Beatty is the king of it in that Beatty had that kind of almost Daniel Day-Lewis thing where like whether or not he was actually making the movie, he felt like the engine of the movie.
Yeah.
Him being in a movie was just kind of a big deal. I mean, that's still true, obviously. If Warren Beatty did a movie today, it would be unusual. He's only done 2 this century.
Right. Like
3 if you count the Dick Tracy special.
You look at his filmography, right? And he gets started in TV in the late 50s. He starts making movies in the 60s.
Sure.
He does a normal amount of movies in the 60s and 70s, even if perhaps he does less than other stars who are working 4 or 5 movies a year, right?
Yeah.
But then you go into the 80s and it's like Reds, 1981. Ishtar 1987. He doesn't make a movie for 6 years after making a film, a giant blockbuster for which he wins Best Director and stars in it and everything. Then after Ishtar, it's 3 years till Dick Tracy. Bugsy's the next year. Love Affair's 3 years after that.
The weirdest one.
4 years to Bulworth. 3 years until Town and Country.
Town and Country.
And then it's 15 years until Rules Don't Apply.
Well, right.
Right.
I mean, he's essentially retired now. But yes, but starting with the parallax view or whatever, that's where it's just like Warren Beatty is the auteur of his career, of his stardom, of his screen image. Ishtar is very much wrapped up in that, and he's using that to get Elaine May a directing job, and then he's meddling because he's a meddler. The man's a meddler. He's a famed meddler.
He's an obsessive perfectionist meddler and an incredibly vain man who never feels happy enough with anything.
Who happens to be devastatingly handsome and charming. Like, I mean, unfortunately, the man was dealt a full deck.
Right. But also deeply insecure and sort of neurotic.
All that joy.
Well, and then you combine that with Hoffman, who's also a perfectionist.
Yes.
And Elaine May, who is also a perfectionist. Didn't she shoot something like 120 hours? I mean, I read one place where they said only Kubrick, shoots more.
Mikey and Nicky is the most film that anyone has ever shot.
Is that still true? It was certainly true at the time.
I think it still is.
And she did a 3-hour cut on that, right? And then the studio cut it down to 1:20.
There's like a 3-hour cut on all these, but this is the big factor. I mean, we were talking about this in Mikey and Nicky, like movie stars who have the reputation of sort of also functioning like directors if they sign on to a film, right? Their tendencies, their star power, their brand is so strong that they become a major voice in the whole shaping of a movie. The big thing is that Beatty, after Reds, goes to Columbia and says, Elaine May is a genius. She has helped me out of a difficult situation twice, and both of those movies became beloved, Oscar-winning hits. She deserves to get to make her blank check movie. He essentially says she's never been given the space to actually make a movie properly. She always is surrounded by the wrong people. She doesn't have a producer supporting her. I want to produce her next movie. It's whatever she wants to do. I will star in it, so I will lend my star power to it. And the terms are she gets whatever she wants, no questions asked. I mean, that's literally what he says to the head of Columbia, who was a friend, who's like, I want to be in the Warren Beatty business, whatever. But he goes, the deal is anything Elaine May wants, no questions asked. At that point, Warren Beatty has only directed Reds and Heaven Can Wait. He's only produced 4 movies total. So aside from how controlling he is on every movie he's in, there's 4 movies he's produced. They're Bonnie and Clyde, Shampoo, Heaven Can Wait, and Reds. So inarguably, his track record was perfect as a producer. Yep. All 4 of those movies are nominated for Best Picture, make a ton of money.
Shampoo wasn't, but, Shampoo was a hit.
Shampoo wasn't nominated for Best Picture?
No, but it got Oscar. It was a big hit. It was still a big movie.
But anyway, he's like, I know how to produce. I'm going to keep this thing on rails. So he goes out to dinner with her and the Columbia guy and goes like, what do you have? And she essentially says, I was watching those Road 2 movies the other night. They're funny. Someone should try to do a modern one of those. But is that an idea? And they were like, yeah, keep going. And she was like, well, I don't know, like Reagan intervening in the Middle East. And they were like, sure, keep going.
Right. Well, and also I think the one thing she does pitch is, and it would be funny if Warren, if you were the Bob Hope, if you were the goof, rather than the suave guy, rather than the Crosby. Right.
And Hoffman was the suave ladies' man.
Because that was the first thing Forky said when I put this on. She was like, wait a second, Beatty is the doofus? And look at, he's like 1.5 feet taller than, and I'm like, yeah, that's the joke. That's what's funny.
What's most incredible about this movie to me, not get ahead of it, but there is a certain odd strain of sincerity and feeling she ingests into this whole thing where I genuinely just buy Beatty being a doofus and Hoffman being a ladies' man, even though it defies all logic.
I think Beatty is so good in this movie. He's so funny.
He's so fucking funny in this.
That's why it works.
But it's also like, despite the fact that this guy is so good looking, he plays such a dope that you're like, well, yeah, no one would go out with him.
It's true. He just like, it's that kind of Christopher Reeve or whatever thing where like he manages to tap into the sort of big galoot.
Yeah.
That, like that he does not really have, but like, he can use his body and the way they dress him and style him. But also I think it's a very, very funny performance. Hoffman is the suave guy. Hoffman played suave guys in that weird way. Yeah. But like in All the President's Men, like, he's arrogant. He's an arrogant guy. Lenny, All the President's Men, so that's more believable. He's good. He's good too.
But there's also there's that famous story that when Pakula asked him to do All the President's Men, he said, which guy was better looking in real life? I want to play that one. I do think Hoffman had this chip on his shoulder of being the least attractive of that generation of leading men, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean, and he was, you would make fun of his big nose, I guess, right? Like that was sort of a butt of jokes in the day. Yeah.
Right.
And I think he was an actor. When I teach acting class, I always bring up the story about, especially when we talk about sense memory, and the story about Dustin Hoffman being in the hospital room when his dad's dying. It's the last moments of his dad, and his brother looks at him, and everybody's sad, and Hoffman's looking around the room, and he's staring at this, and he's staring at that, and his brother said, "Dusty, what are you doing?" And he said, "Shh, no. I want to remember this." And what he was doing was taking in the smell of the antiseptic, the coldness, that's hardcore acting. And I've always considered Beatty to be more of a movie star.
Yeah.
Natural camera loves him type movie star. Yeah. Yes.
And it's so you got to admit that May, balked the trend by having them switch things. But are either one of you fans of Elaine May and Mike Nichols'
big time
work? Okay.
Yeah.
So the whole thing was awkwardness.
Yeah.
Everything was based on discomfort. I can remember reading a story, and this was years and years and years ago, but there was it might have been in the New Yorker, and they were reviewing Nichols and May and the show that they did for 9-10 months on Broadway, and how at the end of the first act they do this Pirandello sketch that it just left audiences mystified and went right to blackout. But they achieved their purpose because it was so awkward and so discomforting. I think that plays a lot into what she thinks is really funny, because there aren't jokes in this movie. There are funny lines. The only joke that I even wrote down was the thing with the buzzards. Well, they're being surrounded by buzzards even though they're still alive, and he says, "You mean they're here on spec?" That but it almost stood out in the fact that
you're right.
Here's a gag, everybody. The scene on the ledge of the building is so. I mean, Elaine May could have played that mom part. That was the kind of stuff in the classic bit they did where Mike Nichols called his mom.
Yes, where he's the rocket scientist. Yes.
Right, where he's the rocket scientist, and he says, "Oh, I feel awful." And she said, "Oh, darling, if I could believe that, I'd be the happiest woman on the planet." There's not a joke in there, but there's brilliant observation in there.
Well, also, I mean, one of the funniest lines in the entire movie to me is when they're complaining they're stuck in the middle of the desert, and because of this and this and that, and our camel is lying down, and he goes, "Well, I mean, I kind of respect him for that."
Yeah.
I think you are getting at something that, again, probably baffled audiences, right? They may have expected a madcap, with Elaine May attached, even if the as you're saying, like, that's not really her style, right? Like, where's the fizzy dialogue? What's all this mumbling and crosstalk and weird kind of tangents? Like, I don't get it. I thought this was a high stakes, high concept comedy.
David, I'm not sure about you, and this is a rhetorical question. Please don't answer, and please don't weigh in at all for the next, 3 minutes. But I'm taking a rain check on spring cleaning this year. Yeah, for once, I've decided to take a break from cleaning up my apartment. Famously natty, well-organized space that I feel very comfortable allowing other people into. What I've decided to do instead is freshen up for the season with comfort instead. Yes, I could take a break from being on my hands and knees, scrubbing the floors with a toothbrush, and I'm going to let myself lounge, stay in bed, relax, really mix up my whole basic day-to-day behavior. And the way I'm going to do this, David, is with sheets, towels, loungewear, and more from Brooklyn. And yeah, it's our friends. It's our good friends, Rich and Vicky Fulop. We're the two friends. They're the two partners, I guess. The spouses. They're the two spouses. Does that make sense? They're spouses to each other. And they also run a company together. Look, the thing about Brooklyn is, and this is a surprise, don't tell anyone, but it's their birthday, okay? And I want to throw them a really cool surprise party, Brooklyn, okay? So here's what we're going to do for their birthday. We're going to buy products from them because their birthday sale is happening this weekend. This is a topical ad, okay? This is not some evergreen junk. This is topical for the week that the Ishtar episode is coming out. Because they're going to be offering site-wide savings on all things comfort for their biggest sale in the year. Look, we all know the deal with Brooklyn. Okay, obviously founded by my best friends, husband and wife duo, Rich and Vicky, with the goal to create beautiful luxury home essentials at prices that didn't break the bank. By working directly with manufacturers, they ensure premium, high-quality comfort every time at a fraction of the retail price. It means ridiculously soft bedding, towels, loungewear, and they're so confident you'll love everything. They'll even offer a 365-day warranty. 365 days? That's enough to last you until their next birthday sale. Oh, and by the way, little humble brag here, listed in the talking points, they've got 75,000 five-star reviews and counting. Hard to argue with that. I love Brooklyn, and I've talked about it a lot. They sent us some stuff for free. And I know podcasters, endorsing products, people are like, well, yeah, but you have to put your own money down on the barrel in order to buy this. You don't know what it's like for an average Joe. Yeah, I do. Because they sent me some free stuff and I said, this is so good. I need more. And I bought more and more and more. And in fact, I've needed some new sheets. And I've been waiting for a good sale. And I'm going to be first in line for this birthday sale. Because you can get everything you need for a spring refresh during Brooklyn's biggest sale of the year. You shop the Brooklyn birthday sale starting this weekend, right when the episode is coming out. And if you're listening to this podcast after the sale ends, that's fine. Don't worry. You can still go to brooklyn.com, use the promo code blank check, no spaces, to get $20 off any purchase of $100 or more. That's BROOKLINEN.com. Enter promo code blank check to get $20 off any purchase of $100 or more. Brooklinen, everything you need to live your most comfortable life. I'm realizing when they wrote here, enter promo code blank check to get $20 off any purchase of $100 or more, there was probably a missed joke opportunity there because it's a birthday sale to go get $20 off any purchase of $100 and many more, like the birthday song. So Rich and Vicky, if you want punch up on your ad copy, I'm happy to do it in exchange for betting. Well, here's another thing. It's like she was part of this legendary comedy duo. They played a lot of characters, but very often their dynamic was the same. Elaine May often played the high-status characters in Nichols and May sketches. As an audience, you very quickly understood how to watch them and how to listen to them and how to get on their rhythms. Hope and Crosby, those movies were based around what those guys' public personas already were. They were very defined. When they sold, hey, it's Hope and Crosby on the road to blank, the audience could do the math. And then when they showed up in the theater, that movie delivered exactly what they wanted to see in their head.
You are exactly right. And one of the differences was, and I admired her for doing this, and I wonder, I haven't seen the director's cut, so I don't know. I realize it's shorter.
Yeah, well, let's talk about
It's a couple minutes shorter. Yeah,
it's 2 minutes shorter, and I have seen no account of what the difference is. I really don't know what the difference is.
What I've read said that there is very little difference.
Yeah. It's the only version that's available to watch now.
I also don't think it's an actual director's cut. I think it's branded as a director's cut.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Elaine May was like, I've been sitting on my cut for years. No. It's more that they finally mastered the movie for Blu, they got it all spruced up, and maybe she trimmed, but it's not like a fucking Blade Runner.
So as we said, it was out of circulation for 20 years. The VHS had long been out of print. It was never released on DVD. It was rarely shown on TV. Richard Brody wrote an article in the New Yorker on the event of the movie is being aired this Thursday at 4 a.m. It's the first time it will have been on TV in 3 years, and that was seen as a historic moment.
Well, the road pictures, the big difference, especially in storytelling, the road pictures started where Bing and Bob, whatever characters they were playing, had history together.
Yes, yeah.
We're in the middle of their relationship. Yeah.
This movie makes the choice to start and then flash back to how they came together, which she makes it work. In the fact that they're sitting at the bar and Cinema Joe, and they're flashing back to how it happened, but that emphasizes the big difference in the fact that you're right, Griffin. Bing and Bob were always playing Bing and Bob,
and you knew who they were separately, you knew who they were together, and this movie is not only giving you a new comedy team you don't know, but the comedy team is made up of two incredibly self-serious and vain movie stars.
Oscar-winning, movie stars who are playing against type.
Right, massive reputations that precede them and are also playing the opposite of what they actually are, which I think is an immediate moment of pushback from audiences.
And also, neither of whom are singers. Whereas,
and neither of whom are comedians.
They're both piano players.
Yes.
Right, yes.
They're both piano players. But those scenes, God Almighty, the scene that you were quoting, and then that trope, that thread continues through the movie, because when they get in the worst trouble, when they get in the most danger, they start making a song up about it.
Whenever they riff a song, it gets me. Any single time. Oh, that's good. Repeat that. What did you just say?
Right.
When they're
it's always bad.
Right. It's always...
The slowest part of the movie, they don't do it.
Yes.
There's a half an hour with all the intrigue, and that's where it kind of bogs down, because I think, and again, I'm criticizing, although I've already established what I love about this movie. You've got this whole section in the middle where they hand the storytelling off to Charles Grodin and to Isabella Adjani, and you don't have those scenes where they start riffing a song, and I don't know how they kept from cracking each other up. Can we talk about the songs for a minute?
Well, I want to get to it in a second, because this is the last bit of business I want to set up, and then we can get into those first.
Then there's 2 bits of business I want to do.
Do your 2 bits. Give me your 2 bits, and I'll give you 1 bit.
Okay. There's 2 things. One, I forgot that there is one piece of rat-a-tat dialogue that I do love, which is when the CIA agents are talking. They're like, the KGB are here. I recognize them. The ones dressed as Texans. No, the ones dressed as Arabs. The ones dressed as Texans are Arabs. And the guys from Turkish intelligence are here. Oh, the ones in the Hawaiian shirts. No, the Bermuda shorts. The Hawaiian shirts guys are tourists. That's so fucking funny.
So to put some punctuation on that, David, the fact that they go through all these, they said, what about the guys in the Hawaiian shirts? They're tourists. The people that pull guns on them are the guys in the Hawaiian shirts.
They're so stupid. Yes.
Right, their appraisal is also wrong.
The other thing is, Richard Brody, you mentioned, he wrote that great account of her presenting Ishtar at the Jacob Burns Center up in Pleasantville. And I just want this quote that he transcribed from her, where someone asked, do you like writing best, acting best, or directing best?
Yeah.
I just have to read her line. It's so good. Yeah. Here's Elaine May. They're really different parts of the brain. Writing is close to acting. In directing, you control. Acting, you can't control how good you are, and you can't control how good you are when you write. You can try to be good. Directing, you can't really control either, but you can think about it. That's her take on what do you prefer the most. She's essentially like, Yeah, you really have no control in any of them, but directing, you're supposedly in control. That's how she feels about the creative process.
And she's a terrific actress.
She's great at everything she has ever done.
And but here's my point. They get over there and they start shooting. It seems to me that section that we all love so much, that first 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it's just has such an Elaine May feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it goes to the desert, that's where it feels like she loses control.
Okay, so let me
the picture.
Let me give you some bits of business here, Clint, because I did some digging. I made a little more sense of a lot of the sort of timeline, development, production stuff on this movie. So the original pitch is, as I was saying, to Beatty and the head of Columbia over dinner. She starts spitballing stuff. She goes, it would be Beatty. He's the dope. The other guy's a womanizer. We'll cast someone against type. Maybe it's Hoffman, right? But Beatty is on board. Columbia, they go like, I don't know if this is a movie, but also Warren Beatty doesn't miss.
Right.
Let's see if he can get a second big person on board. They go to Hoffman. After she goes away, they give her some money to write the script. She writes it. They bring it to Hoffman. They do a table read with Grodin as well. And Hoffman's got his like big mentor, who's a playwright. I forget the name of, but who was like his consultant on everything. You know the name, Clint.
Right. Schlister?
It's something like that. Yes.
But Murray Schiskel.
Yes.
Schiskel, yeah. His guru, more or less. Yeah.
Right. And there's so many stories of Hoffman considering making a movie and then coming in with Schiskel and having so many notes that eventually people threw their hands up, or movies that Hoffman did end up making 4 different directors go through it because no one wanted to put up with him. I remember when we were shooting Draft Day, the screenwriters telling me that Dustin Hoffman really wanted to play the Frank Langella role.
Right, the owner. Right.
The owner of the team. And Ivan Reitman's response is, life is too short to work with Dustin Hoffman, which is pretty incredible because most of Ivan Reitman's career was based on him being able to wrangle incredibly difficult movie stars.
Right, your Bill Murrays, right.
And he did a Redford movie, he did like 3 Bill Murrays, he did a fucking Costner movie, and he was just like, Dustin Hoffman, absolutely. And Hoffman like wanted to do it. And he wouldn't do it.
But Reitman is probably long enough in the biz to know there's a difference between him wanting to do it and him being ready to do what the script is and like show up on the right. Like it's like, no, there's going to be a whole thing that follows that.
Right. So they bring it to Hoffman, and Hoffman comes back after they do the table read with his Schiskel or whatever his name is, and says, here's my thought. I think the first 25 pages of them in New York are great. I think the movie should never leave New York. That's the real thing you have here. I know you conceived this as a Road to riff, but I think these characters that you've landed on, this dynamic, this sort of exploration of people who have everything but talent, you know? Right. These sort of marginal figures on the sidelines of the entertainment industry who no one ever considers, and if they do, it's in such a mocking way, doing it with such compassion. This is the movie here. And Elaine May pushes back, and I think it's a little bit just because it's like we're in too deep now. Like, well, the whole thing we sold was the Road to thing, and I'm interested in America and interventionist politics, and I want to do all this stuff. And they push back a bunch, and eventually Beatty says, look, I have her back, whatever she wants to do. If she wants the movie to take place in Ishtar, it's taking place in Ishtar. And they assume that Hoffman's going to walk, and he signs on instead.
Right.
And his playwright friend asked him why, and he said, look, I just don't know at this point. I can't go another 5 years without making a movie.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't try to control this situation. I'm going to sign on because it's good people involved and hope that it works.
He has that great quote that he gave to Jeremy, Mr. Beeks, you know, like where he's like, it has a statement to make. I love that movie. It's far better to spend life being second rate in something you're passionate about than to spend life being first rate, something you're not passionate about. Like he just loves, as you're saying, like he loves these guys. He loves the concept of these no talent guys trying their hardest to be the next Simon and Garfunkel. So right, that backs that up.
In interviews when people shit on it, he always goes like, look, it's a perfect movie, but I have no regrets about making it, and I would argue that the first 30 minutes of Ishtar stack up against any American comedy ever.
And I agree.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. But so it's one of the rare cases where, especially in his leading man days, Hoffman just kind of like throws his hands up and goes like, let's see how this goes. The three of them get $12 million combined, which in today's dollars would be over $30 million before any other costs of the movie are put down.
It's a lot of money.
Columbia has the exact same sort of trepidations that Hoffman did about the story, and especially how difficult and expensive it was going to be to shoot. But the head of Columbia at that time, despite on top of being feeling like he owed it to Beatty, is also just like, I'm going to look like a fool if I say no to this. Someone else is going to pick it up because it's Beatty and Hoffman, and that's huge. And I'll look even dumber if the movie ends up being a hit. I guess I should just take the risk. Coca-Cola owns Columbia at this point in time. They have some big deal with HBO where like their movies, the financing for the movies is pretty much pre-sold by the HBO deal.
Right.
So Columbia offers the three of them $12 million combined. I think it's like 5 for Beatty, 5 for Hoffman, 2 for Elaine May. And as the movie starts pre-production and they can see it's going to get big and expensive, they have a hard time finding the right location to shoot and all this shit, they offer to defer their salary and put it into back-end points. And Columbia and Coca-Cola, more importantly, says no as like a status thing. No, we're a big studio. We're Coca-Cola. We own a movie studio now.
Right.
We're not skimping. We insist on paying you too much money.
It's so wild that these fucking companies buy movie studios. And they're like, so what do you guys do here? You make movies? We make soda. Is that similar to making movies? Well, we probably will figure it out, right? It's just the same with the fucking AT&T guys coming to Warner Brothers, and they're just like, have you guys seen Netflix? You should do that. You should do one of those. Do you have a Netflix? Like, get that going, okay? All right, I'll be over here. Call me on the phone. I invented the phone.
Much like Coca-Cola, I expect that in 2 years, AT&T will go, this is so not worth it.
Yeah, 100%. They'll be like, can we offload the fucking Warner Media? What is that? Yeah, no, definitely.
But this is the last thing I want to say before we get into the actual body of the movie itself, especially talking about that first New York chunk. The way they structured the shoot, Clint, which I think plays into what we're talking about, is that they shot all the Ishtar stuff first. It was supposed to be 8 weeks in Morocco shooting the Ishtar. Then they go to New York and shoot all of that stuff and focus on the songs and everything else. And instead, of course, the Ishtar portion of the shoot ballooned out of control. Elaine May, who is incredibly neurotic, was terrified of the sun. So I think a big part of her not being hands-on directing actors was, by all accounts, she wrapped herself from like head to toe in gauze and wore a giant hat and sunglasses. They always said she looked like a stormtrooper on set.
And had a horrible toothache and wouldn't go see a dentist.
Yes. Yeah. Was like hiding in a tent the whole time, far away from them. But the other part of it is so much of her process, I think, is just like this Kubrick, Fincher-esque, just do 100 takes. I'll know it when I see it. I don't want to tell you what to do. I want you to keep doing it until I see the thing I want to see.
And I think, like, especially Beatty, but, they're just baffled. They're just like, what are you talking about? Just give me some direction over here. I've done, I'm a fucking movie star. Like, this is where the, like, well, she's not doing anything, in air quotes, is coming from, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because Beatty's saying, like, she doesn't know how to direct. I mean, I don't know what to do.
I think performance-wise, I always have heard that Beatty is a guy who obsessively demands 100 takes for every single shot he's in.
Well, sure. All his movies take fucking forever to make. Yeah.
Right. I think his frustration came from, I don't know if Elaine is directing this properly. I think Hoffman wanted more hand-holding as an actor. Mm-hmm. But the New York stuff was shot last.
That's what? That blows my mind.
Right?
Right. You'd think that was the good early days.
Yeah, because the reason it blows my mind is because if they were going to disassociate and if they were going to say, let's just go through the motions and get this over with, it would have happened, when they were shooting in the desert. And then because the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes, God, they're so into it and they're so on it. Oh, that really does amaze me. That amazes me.
It's fascinating in terms of energy, but let's get into this because this is, I think, so often about if I ever were to direct a movie in my life, especially if it was a comedy, but not only if it was a comedy, I think so much about the structure of this film and the structure of the first 30 minutes as its own mini movie almost, and what it accomplishes and how it accomplishes it in such an unconventional way. The opening of the movie is hearing them riffing the song lyrics over just black titles, right?
Yep.
It's so funny.
So you're getting this tone setting. It's like listening to a Nichols and May album. You're just getting into the rhythms of the patter, right? And the comedy. And, you know, as you were saying, Clint, like, I don't think it's coincidental that all of Elaine May's movies are about duos, and they're about duos with incredibly unhealthy relationships and the awkwardnesses that existed between them. You know, it's two couples in the first two movies and two male friendships in the last two movies. But it's always about, her mind comes back to sort of, I think, the same genesis that created the Nichols and May sketches, right? The dynamics of two people driving each other crazy who also can't get away from each other. And you just set that up with that opening, and then you have like 6 lightning fast rocket sled minutes where you see them writing, you see them performing, you see them outside the Tower Records complaining about the fact that they could be as big as Simon and Garfunkel, that Dangerous Business is as good as Bridge Over Troubled Water.
And all of it quick cuts, very short scenes.
Yes.
Boom, snippet, boom, snippet,
Yeah,
boom,
good
snippet.
energy.
Oh, now we're over here, now we're over there.
Like sentence fragments, a thing I feel like people don't even attempt to do in movies that much. I mean, we talked about it a little bit recently. Castaway sort of does a similar thing where you're just getting these little glimpses, fragments, and knowing that it's spanning much longer time. And Lady Bird did it well recently. But this is just like, you're getting these snippets. The way 3 minutes in, the film is already canonizing Dangerous Business as this important work, right? Do you not understand? We could be... Dangerous Business is as good as any of those songs. So then they do the show.
That's the single.
Right. They call up Jack Weston, right? They cold call this agent.
So funny.
Oh, God.
So fucking good in this movie.
Hysterical in this. Obviously, he's in A New Leaf. He's a long-time Elaine May collaborator. Yes.
But just like here he is pouring alcohol into his coffee, right? His hands shaking, trying to take notes. He can't distinguish between what the name of the band is and the name of the location is and all that sort of stuff. And then he goes there, sees their show, kind of doesn't give a shit, and says the only place I could get you booked in is like Northern Africa, right?
Yeah. Well, no, wait. There's one other thing here. I can't remember what it is.
Honduras?
Honduras. Honduras
Right.
or Northern
It's Honduras,
Africa.
right. And they say Northern Africa is safer. That all happens in
No,
the
but, he's like, but I can only give you the airfare from the Canary Islands.
Right. You have to get yourself the rest of the way out there.
Right.
That all happens in 6 minutes of the movie, right? So that's a really efficient 6 minutes of the movie. Then they walk into the bar, and the flashback starts 6 minutes in. They walk in the bar. He goes, I need some time alone to think. They're having this depression moment of, is it not going to happen for us? If this is the best deal we can get, is it not going to happen for us? You already feel like you know these guys really well, right? Yeah. So they walk into this bar. Beatty follows him in because he's such a dope. He fundamentally doesn't know how to let his friend be alone. Even
I want to be alone.
Right.
Oh, yeah, well, it's the only bar that's open.
Right.
So funny when he's just standing there. That's what cracks me up. Go on. Sorry.
So then you do the Wayne's World flashback to how they met. And now you have like 15 minutes of table setting of just, we're going to make you feel like you have lived an entire lifetime with these guys. And it's
I will say, right. I love this. This is probably the first point at which audiences were like, I thought we were going to Morocco. What's happening here?
Which I will say.
Not in a bad way.
No, seeing this movie at the 92nd Street Y, knowing so little about it other than the poster and that it was always called a disaster, when I'm watching the film at this point, I go, was I getting this confused with another movie? Is this not about them going to the Middle East? Right. It just feels like there's no way this movie ends up with them in some like espionage caper. But yes, in terms of how it was sold, this is incredibly confusing to audiences. Why is it taking so long to get to the point? But I think what it does is, unlike a lot of fish out of water movies, it really makes you feel like you've seen an entire movie's worth of these guys' normal life before you put them out of water. Whereas a lot of movies, it's like you're already caught up in the plot machinations. When you're establishing the characters, you're so aware of the fact that the status quo is going to get disrupted. This movie lulls you into a sort of false movie that it's not actually going to be, even if that is probably the movie it should be. But you go into this extended sequence and what is essentially like a love story, right? This platonic love story between these two men, these two guys who don't understand that they don't have it. Right? They have everything else. They have the work ethic. They have the determination.
They even have a wife and a girlfriend.
Yeah.
The brilliant Carol Kane and Tess Harper.
Carol Kane's so funny.
You have two Academy Award nominated actresses playing their completely ignored partners.
Right. Without a joke between them.
Yeah.
There's not a joke between them. And when it's establishing him as an ice cream man who's making up songs and is thinking so hard about song lyrics that he completely blows by these kids wanting to buy ice cream. And then I know we're summarizing, but I've got to point this out because my hardest laugh in the entire movie, and this is the God honest truth, is when Hoffman has made up the song for the couple that had been coming to the restaurant for 60 years, and the song lyric says, "I'm leaving some love in my will." I swear to God, if I'd been drinking milk, it would have shot out my nose. I would have done a Danny Thomas, Uncle Tanoose is coming. That to me was, and that is so brilliant. It's a great gag, and I absolutely love that whole sequence of him playing the piano, and even their first couple of gigs highlights a thread. It's the musical numbers in this movie are brilliant,
are incredible.
I don't mean good, but they are not so bad they're not good, and they're not so good that they're not bad. And it's Paul Williams.
We should mention it's Paul Williams, who is, a pop star in his own right, is a very successful songwriter for others at this point, has become also a bit of a, a public figure, is acting in things, is doing Battle of the Network Stars or whatever. But
has created a persona for himself,
and also is the main songwriter for the Muppets, which has a very similar attitude of these oddballs trying their hardest to put on a show. Yeah. And that was another big cost for this movie, where every song you hear in this film, and you almost always only hear a line or two, he wrote the entire song.
Right.
And Beatty and Hoffman
May made them learn the entire song.
Learned how to play the entire song. Yes.
Right.
I mean, they shut down production for weeks so that they could learn the songs.
One of the things that I have always said about this movie, and my sons will blast me when they hear this, because I have been assured they listen. This would make the funniest damn Broadway musical that ever was, because the songs wouldn't take themselves too seriously, as long as you never had a song that was a serious love song, or if you just played those little snippets, the movie is at its most brilliant when they're performing.
I mean, there's the one Wardrobe of Love where I think the lyric is, I said, honey, don't you know there's a wardrobe of love in your eyes? I said, why don't you come inside and see if there's something your size? And it's Hoffman playing the piano and Beatty out of focus, just eating an apple and tossing off lyrics. And Hoffman just turns to him and he goes, man, when you're on, you're on.
They're very supportive of each other. This movie is all about partnership and collaboration.
Right. This is the healthiest relationship she's ever depicted. And you get to that sequence. I mean, it's like Tess Harper and
Carol Kane?
No, I'm sorry. It's Harper and Beatty at that restaurant, and he's complaining about the fact that he was fired as the ice cream truck driver, right? Because he failed to notice that kids wanted to buy ice cream. He was too busy singing his rum raisin song. Then Hoffman is singing this song for this old couple who he promised, if you come back for your anniversary, I'll write you this song that ends up being about their death, right?
And their faces.
Right. Oh, it's such a good Elaine May, like the camera just slowly pans across the table and you know what everyone's reaction is going to be. And you're just waiting to see what's the next face. What are the different variations of surprise and fright and what have you. But then Hoffman goes into this fight with Carol Kane where he refuses to marry her because he's so caught up in his career, right?
Yeah.
And then the waiter passes him the note from Beatty saying, I'm also a songwriter. I love your song. And Hoffman just lights up. He knows nothing about this guy. He doesn't know this guy's credentials, right? And it's like the prettiest girl in high school just asked him out. And he sees Beatty waving to him from the back of the room like a big galoof. And then it just cuts to them. The place is closed. All the tables are turned over.
Can we have another half hour? Can we have just another half hour?
Oh, that's good. That's good. So give me one half hour
give me
last
half hour. Yeah, the power. Oh, God.
And it's just Kane and Harper sitting at the table just watching like probably 6 drinks in. And you're like, well, these women are done. They're done. They're never going to get as much love from these guys as these guys have for each other. Because they indulge each other's dreams. And then just all this songwriting is so fucking good, leading to Harper dumping Beatty and Hoffman having to give him the talk of encouragement. That great scene of them walking down the street. I mean, all these scenes are like 30 seconds long. They all feel like 3-panel comic strips, right? Like you're just getting these little glimpses, but they both have to talk each other through breakups. There's the scene where they go to the bar and Beatty is like, well, it's easy for you to pick up a girl, you know, I mean, you walk in, you got the looks, you know, you got
he's
that,
the hawk, man.
right, he's the hawk. You know, you got that face, you know, real mean looking, but with character.
Warren Beatty just with like a fucking Mount Olympus ass chin, like the most beautiful marble cut face.
And he's like crystal blue
so
eyes. But that scene where Hoffman is like improvising a song for this random woman at a bar and Beatty's just standing behind them with her friend and he just doesn't know how to say anything. They're just staring at each other uncomfortably. And then, you know, he's saying like, it doesn't matter. She never understood you. It doesn't matter. And then of course, when Carol Kane dumps Hoffman, he's suicidal. He goes off on the ledge. And that scene is so sweet.
I didn't think I could get here in time. That's why I called the cops,
right.
You know. And when that's exactly what he wanted him to do, he wanted him to call the cops, you know.
Well, he didn't even go out on the ledge. Like he was like, you know, sitting in his window saying he's on the ledge. Like all of that is so like, I don't know. There's a lot of like truth in the ego of the character.
He doesn't go out into the ledge until the cops show up to talk him off the ledge. Until then, he's got a pillow waiting, resting against the windowsill, and he carries the pillow out with him on the ledge. And then his parents show up, and the parents are so telling.
And the rabbi. Don't forget the rabbi.
Of course, the rabbi. But his parents show up in like fur, you know, in like the finest wares. And it's so clear because you've already had the scene where Beatty's talking after his Tess Harper breakup about how, like, you know, the plant shut down. They lost all their jobs in the Midwest. So they moved to New York because he wanted to be a songwriter. That he grew up from a much more modest, you know, family where no one believed in him, and Hoffman has probably been indulged and supported beyond belief his entire life. You know,
that ledge scene is so much a May and Nichols sketch. There's the line where he's trying to talk Hoffman in off the ledge, and he says, "It takes a lot of nerve to have nothing at your age."
It's so
oh God,
that's such a so many great backhanded compliments like that throughout the movie that are just so perfectly inept. I don't mean to be the buzzkill because I love this. I'm more trying to understand why this thing was so reviled. Are people mad maybe that like Beatty is playing a dope where they're like, don't try and fool us, Warren. Like, we know you're fucking Warren Beatty. Like, is that part of it that people are just like, you can't smuggle this past us, you trying to sort of de-glam? Like, I'm just trying to understand.
I think it is when people walked in maybe with that, but I think it doesn't take long for the two of them to win you over.
I agree. Yeah.
That they really are Lyle and Chuck. I can remember the first time I saw it. I went, wait, why did they make the choice of him being the schmuck? I think there is some resistance there, but I think that goes away. I
find it completely disarming, but I think it probably also had to do with the whirlwind of press leading up to it and how much this was framed as ego indulgence out of control.
But is it also just that it's been 6 years since a Beatty movie? and same, Hoffman, it's been a while too, but Beatty especially, the last time he did Reds, he's so fucking hot in that movie. He wins. Like, is it just that where they're like, excuse me, we've been waiting on a movie where you're sexy and cool. This is not what the doctor ordered. Like, I'm just trying to understand.
I think that's a part of it. I do also think, and perhaps it's washed away a little bit, but I do think there's a bit of resentment with very serious actors do comedy,
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm sort of, I guess, trying to drill down at is like, right. Is it just that kind of chip on shoulder, like, stay in your lane, Beatty?
I think that's part
right.
of
If
it.
I wanted a comedy, I'd call, Eddie Murphy, whoever the big star is.
The Pauline Kael review is like vicious, and she says, like, I don't understand why this isn't Steve Martin and Bill Murray. You can imagine Steve Martin and Bill Murray doing this in every scene, and it would actually be funny. But what's
Go
funny
see
about
a movie
it,
with them, then, Pauline.
right? I think that's part of the magic of this movie is getting two guys who aren't by their very nature comedians. And like Beatty had done Heaven Can Wait, but Heaven Can Wait's like a light comedy that's about him being a charming guy, It's
about him being a hot doofus, but
right.
He's hot.
Yeah, but for most of it, he's not perceived by people. He's in the body,
right.
So I think he's
great movie.
I think he's very funny in that.
He's great in that.
So funny in that.
I think the framing of it, of the movie not pretending that he isn't Warren Beatty, the comedy coming out of he can't be Warren Beatty versus this movie where it's like, this guy can't get laid, I think was just a bridge too far for people a certain degree. I think it's, we've talked about the thing where like for so long, every time Meryl Streep tried to make a comedy, the critics all said like, Meryl can't do comedy. Stop trying to do comedy.
You shall not pass. Do not even try.
You can't do everything.
Yes, definitely that. I mean, it's telling that he doesn't do another comedy for 11 years. His next comedy is Bulworth, which is a bananas movie and performance. But like after this, he's like, fine, I'll do Dick Tracy. I'll just be literally a guy whose jaw is drawn with a set square, who shoots bad guys, who has no internal character. Like he'll just, you want me to be like a cartoon handsome man? That's what I'll do. And then he does Bugsy, which is a terrible movie. But again, it was a big prestige, like I'm playing this serious guy, this major figure. I'm tortured, I'm handsome, I'm a gangster. That movie stinks.
He meets his wife and then does a movie about how much he loves his wife.
I mean, that thing.
And am I wrong in thinking that Hoffman's direct movie following this is Rain Man?
That's a good question. That sounds right. That sounds plausible, right? Rain Man's right around there.
That he just immediately goes to what everyone wants to see him do, which is just like Hoffman commit
Oscar.
too hard to something.
You're right. Next year.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, I think people didn't like them doing this, and I think the buy-in on it where it's not, like, I disagree with the Pauline Kael thing of, oh, it's funnier if it's Murray and Martin. No, Murray and Martin means it's less work. You walk into the movie, much like Hope and Crosby, already having their comedic personas, which have been honed for decades, in your back pocket. This movie is asking you to actually engage with them as real people, which is part of the gambit, that you actually need to care about these people and feel stakes when they're talking each other off a ledge, which can only be done if they're built as characters and not just extensions of comedic personas. And I also think the fact that it's two very self-serious, vain, dramatic actors imbues it with a kind of weight and a seriousness every time they talk about their music and their craft, which is the main thing that they latch onto in this movie, is this, the weird kind of poetry of people who have everything but talent, but they have the gift of not knowing that they're never going to be good.
I've been reading John Cleese's book on creativity. Justin got it for me. It's not a very creatively titled book. It's just called Creativity. But there's a point in there where it says, creativity is not the same as the urge to create. That
sure,
people may have the urge to create, but they, heaven forfend that you ever say that somebody doesn't have a skill at this or a skill at that. You can't say that. But the thing that gets me about these guys is they are successful on a certain level and can't live with it. When they do their performance in Marrakesh, at the Chez Casablanca, they kill. People love what they're doing. The covers, they're doing their songs, and they're doing their headbands, and they're They are really into it. And yet they get this standing ovation, this I don't know if he's a sheikh or a sultan or a whatever he is, wants to book him to come entertain at his house. And they say, we're a hit. They succeed on that level, but they want more. They
want to be in the window at Tower Records.
Yeah, the Simon and Garfunkel thing runs all. Simon and Garfunkel should have gotten a credit. They get mentioned so many times in this, to the point where I thought, I wonder what this movie would have been if they had hired Simon and Garfunkel to play these two characters.
That would be funny.
That's the only counter to, and it's not even a counter to what you were saying, Griffin. But whereas I think the thing that sunk this movie was the press. I think that was what doomed it. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I've already owned up to the fact that I let it, talk me out of it. And every one of those things in the press was the budget. The budget's out of control. And a big, whatever, a third, 40% of that budget went to pay Hoffman and Beatty and Elaine May. Right. Not that was so unusual. Having two big superstars in it maybe was.
Yeah.
But if that is what doomed the movie, what if they had made it with Matthew Broderick and Bruce Willis, or
sure.
Maybe it would have been given a little bit more slack if it hadn't been a $55 million movie, if it had been a $25 million movie.
Yes.
But that wouldn't have necessarily made it a better picture.
Let's also say the deal structure and the salaries are pretty similar if you map it onto modern numbers as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's like, here is Tarantino and two of the biggest stars in the same movie. You're going to have to pay for it. You're going to have to give them creative freedom. But no one questions that because the movie worked, right? If it doesn't work, people say, how dare you pay Hoffman and Beatty to be in the same film?
Right. That's right. That's fair. That's fair. I will say, there's the other context that when they get the deal, Guy McElroy is in charge of Columbia, and he was Warren Beatty's publicist, like in the old days. So he is like their pal, and he's like, yeah, okay, sure, give them whatever they want, right? And then while the movie's getting made, he gets fired, and David Putnam is installed, and David Putnam is like, let's
loop back around to this,
okay?
Because the Putnam thing has to be its own sort of chapter.
Yeah,
okay.
David, I want to circle back to a point I was making earlier, that I've decided to stop being so kind of rigorous and controlled in every aspect of my life. And I've decided to get lazy and to get comfortable. Okay, so I got my Brooklyn sheets from the birthday sale, but that's not enough. Okay, I need to be comfortable under the sheets. I need to be comfortable the rare times I'm going to get out of bed. And if you ask me for socks, shirts, hoodies, underwear, polos, and active shorts, Mack Weldon promises comfort and a consistent fit. Yeah, it's our good friends, Mack Weldon. I believe our first sponsor ever on the show, and you never forget your first. And here's another thing that I never forget, that I don't just look great in Mack Weldon. I'd say empirically look the best I've ever looked. Their underwear, socks, and shirts perform well, too. From working out, a thing I'm just going to take a break from doing because I've been going too hard. Going out, once again, I feel like now's a good time for me to stay home and just get to know my apartment a little better after a year of going out in the town too often. Going to work or on a date, two things I really, really have maxed out on. Mack Weldon is for everyday life. And this is because of their fabric technology. Yeah, Mack Weldon offers a wide range of customized fabrics that can keep up with you no matter what your day looks like. Whether it's all those activities that I mentioned that people do on a regular basis, or spending literally 24 straight hours in bed watching The Muppet Show, only taking breaks to pee. We're talking 18-hour silver, Air Knit X, dry knit, warm knit. These are some technologies they got, and this isn't any sort of rinky-dink Bunsen honeydew stuff that's going to backfire on you, make it feel like Beaker. It's good, okay? That's my endorsement. It's good. And Mack Weldon has created a totally free loyalty program. Level 1 gets you free shipping for life. Done. Once you reach level 2, by spending $200, Mack Weldon gives you 20% off every order for the next year. And Mack Weldon wants you to be comfortable. So if you don't like your first pair of underwear, you can keep them and they'll still refund you. No questions asked. Okay? I got the Ace sweatpants. They're my favorite pants, bar none. They make me feel good. And that's not nothing these days. And so here's the deal, okay? For 20% off your first order, you visit MackWeldon.com/check, enter promo code check, okay? So let's just put it this way. You go to MackWeldon.com, you place any order, use promo code check, okay? You get 20% off. That gets you level 1. You get free shipping. Then once you hit level 2, you get 20% off every order for the next year. I know I'm repeating myself here, but the point is, this is a hack to just always get 20% off Mack Weldon. So that's all you got to do, okay? For 20% off your first order, go to MackWeldon.com/check. Enter promo code check. I think we should go to Ishtar because you get the windowsill. He talks him off the ledge. It cuts back to the bar. They're out of the flashback. Let's do it. Let's go to Ishtar. And at minute 25, the movie essentially starts for the second time, right? Mm-hmm. It's the sequence that most movies would have used as their cold open.
Or this could be 5 minutes in. Like after Jack Weston is like, well, there's this, and then it's like, okay, cut to this.
Yeah.
Really, really quickly, I just want to say, because I don't think we get as much of it in the next section of the movie. The fashion, the 80s fashion, like we've said, the headbands, but like the suit jackets, like it is amazing. Everyone is dressed in this New York section to a T. It's so perfect. I was like pausing and taking like pictures with my phone of like looks. Because I was straight up like, this is fucking amazing. And I just wanted to throw that in there. I didn't want to derail
the
too
bands
much,
at the Song Mart, the screaming hunkers and the swing and the teacher's, what was it? Teacher's daughter.
Yeah.
They're dressed. It's hysterically funny.
That's also such a good cut when you have like montage, all these full bands.
Yeah.
And then it's just Rogers and Clark with a bongo drum on a stand, you know? Beatty's earmuffs with the furry, like he's got that like furry fedora.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the best looks when they're outside in the winter. But yes, then you do this hard cut to Ishtar, right? Which is like, it feels like the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark or something. Suddenly it's an entirely different movie. And I feel like a lot of comedies that are fish out of water start with the serious thing like this. Then they go like, but where were those two men come from? And then you do the comedic cut to, here are two goofuses.
Yeah. Or another one was, we're never going to Ishtar.
Right.
Cut and they're getting off the
I'm
plane.
not $100. There's no way. Yes. After that, you could do that.
Right. This is like 20 minutes of presenting two pathetic guys to you, making you care for them, and then saying, now never mind, they're going to go get caught up in an international espionage case.
Right.
But now it's like dead serious, sweeping score, these beautiful vistas of the desert, and there's the map that could help liberate the people of it.
Yeah, it's right. It is maybe one too many things to keep track of, you know, between the map and the FBI, the CIA. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think the convolutedness is the point. That's part of the joke. But maybe that's kind of, you know, you do kind of just have to be like, I don't know, who cares? You know, like rather than trying to keep track. Yeah.
I feel like the Grodin character is where they most successfully set the audience expectations for this, because he's sort of like J.K. Simmons in Burn
That's
After
the
Reading.
comparison I was going to make.
The point is, I don't understand any of this.
The ending of this movie, Burn After Reading, is the same ending where he's like explaining it all, and the guy's like, "What?" And he's like, "Look, it doesn't matter anyway. We have to
we
pay
fucked
for their
up.
album."
I close the book. Right?
Yeah, and has become a big supporter.
Right? Yeah.
That's the single.
Yeah,
that's the single.
Yeah.
Right, but now this movie is like, whereas before the movie's been moving so fast, but with like backstory and character development movements.
Yes,
now it
does slow down.
It's slowing down, but it's also loading us with a lot of plot information. You know, they get to the airport, they get their passport stamped. Immediately, Isabella Johnny's there.
Mm-hmm. Pulls up her shirt to reveal that she's a woman. a bit that I never fully get, that they're all like, this is obviously a teenage boy. I'm like, is it obviously a teenage boy? It kind of looks like a lady to me.
Yeah, it kind of looks like international superstar Isabel
And of
Rajani.
course, she's like dating Warren Beatty at the time. That's another thing that'll hurt you
Right.
in the press, obviously, is like, oh,
Yes.
he's got his ingenue girlfriend in the movie. Like, all right, Warren.
Right, who at this point has already been nominated for 2 Academy Awards and held the record for 30 years as the youngest ever Best Actress
Is it
nominee.
Winslet that knocks that off, or someone? I think it's Kate.
No,
Winslet.
it's for lead. It's Keisha Castle Hughes, I think, is the
Oh,
youngest.
she's the youngest first time nominee. I thought you were. Oh, that's crazy.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Weird bit though. Wow.
Yes,
It's like
very weird bit.
Really
Weird.
odd.
What
bit.
gets
so
repeated
weird.
later on.
I was gonna say
later on in the same, except it's Warren Beatty wrestling with her, and are those breasts? Yeah,
Yes,
and then she kisses him, and it reminded me of the Blackadder scene. Well, Bob,
Bob.
you're a boy, right, Bob?
Bob.
But she plays an important part if you're still
Yes.
trying to make the connection to the Road Pictures, because she's basically Dorothy Lamour. She's the woman that comes between the two of them and kind of drives a little bit of a wedge between them, and doesn't get resolved until later in the movie, which was pretty typical for the Hope and Crosby, movies. They were always buddies, but they're always kind of competing for the same woman. And while they don't really, and that's a big part of this relationship too. I think you got Hoffman saying, and later on where he says, "Oh, she chose him," and he's obviously jealous. My girl, no, I think that whole my girl, no, she's my girl kind of thing.
Right.
I do like watching it. I feel like, this bit you go like, oh, fuck, what kind of gay panic shit are they going to get into? But both times I think they thread the needle pretty well.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, as weird as the boob in the airport moment is, Hoffman's response is, I'm not gay. Look, I'm not apologizing. I'm not proud of it. I'm not
that
embarrassed.
bit murders me.
I'm
It's
not
so
judging.
Funny. He's embarrassed. Like, look, I wish I was gay. That'd be very cool of me.
Right. He's embarrassed that he's straight, but then he corrects it with like, but I'm not going to apologize for it. Right. And then with Beatty, it feels like he's having like sort of like a moment of self-discovery.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Yes.
he doesn't rebel against it. I mean, he has that thing where he's like, you're such a soft combatant.
Yeah.
He's like, your body's so soft. Your complexion. I mean, what do you do to your skin? But it's an odd double beat, just especially because Isabella Johnny reads very feminine, despite the fact that she's wearing male clothes, and they talk a lot about how they had her redub most of her dialogue to lower her pitch. It doesn't really convince
No,
you.
she's
No.
a famously beautiful actress. She's
Yes.
very striking. Yes.
It's also just another strange element of this movie. Obviously, her and Beatty are together, as you said, David. But like, if you're looking at her as the Dorothy Lamour of the movie, Clint, to cast like this very serious art house French ingenue who is mostly known for her tragic pathos in the role and play it entirely straight is an interesting calculation.
And it's not until the end that she, where she says, I think they're amazing.
Yeah.
She's fallen for both of them,
Which I think is a lovely moment,
Yeah.
but it's also, up until that point, I mean, there's that scene where she's talking to the guys and they're saying to her, like, you need to take these 2 guys out. And she has that sort of pause of like, I understand the correct choice is to let 2 men die instead of 1,000, but that doesn't make it any easier.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think she plays it well.
Yeah. Yes, but is not giving a comedy performance, which I like, but is another thing that probably makes people go, what the fuck is this movie?
Yes. Definitely.
But yes, she has asked Hoffman for his passport so she can travel and gives him the backpack, which he doesn't realize is the map.
Is that's the thing you should do at airports, right? Even
Swap
still to
backpacks?
this day, right? Just swap backpacks with the stranger.
Yeah, right.
Give a stranger a passport? Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right? That's just the thing we all should do.
But then Grodin comes in almost immediately after that, right? Because
And steals the movie.
Yes. I mean, she convinces Hoffman it's going to be very easy to get new passports. Then you cut to the embassy, which is surrounded by armed guards. And the guy's like, absolutely not. Absolutely not by Monday.
What have we done? Oh.
And then there's such a good, like, 3-panel comic strip gag where Hoffman gets up and performatively, because he's still pretending like he was mugged, punches the wall. He punches a hole through the wall because the Ishtar embassy is so bad. Then you see a guy poke his head out. And then when they go into the reverse shot of their coverage, you see the guy in the other office trying to repair the wall.
Yeah, and the reactions of the guys in the background while all this important stuff's going on kills. It kills.
So funny. So funny. But now they think like, oh, Hoffman's going to be stuck. Beatty's going to have to do the show without him. Beatty is in over his head. I mean, it's one of those things that Hoffman says to Carol Kane when they're breaking up of just like, you don't understand. I need to be there for him. He cries like once an hour. He's so protective of this guy. But so Beatty goes off. Hoffman feels like I'm just going to be stuck in Morocco for the next week or whatever. But then Charles Grodin finds him at this bar and circles him like a hawk. Yeah.
Grodin's so funny.
Handles him so brilliantly.
So good.
I could watch a whole movie about the Grodin character. Like, not that I need to, but you know what I mean? Just him being a bumbling CIA agent is another. That's great. Let me watch that too.
It is the only reason the Ishtar section of the movie stays afloat, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, you're exactly right. He's they give him the best gags.
Right.
And he basically is the plot driver.
And he frames it perfectly. I mean, his reactions are the right comedic grounding for these two guys shouldn't be in this movie. His befuddlement, his anger, his sort of like sliminess. I mean, the fact that, he understands the ego of a failed entertainer so badly that he knows the play is to make Hoffman feel like he is important, right? That he's a major figure. Even though to everyone else, he's saying, these guys are pawns. The guys don't matter. They're just the two guys who happen to be in the place at the time.
And the scene where he meets him in the restaurant and all the waiters are spies. And as soon as Hoffman walks past them to get to the table, they're like, holding up radioactive, Geiger counters and trying to find Lynn on him. And then they snap back into character is something like you would see in a Mel Brooks movie. I mean, it's hilariously funny. And the thing with the pen.
Well, I was going to say, he gives him the pen because Hoffman says he really likes it. Grodin says, like, take it, fine, take my pen. I don't care. And then in that second dinner scene, he starts repeating the things back to him, word perfect. He's like, how do you know? He goes, the pen. The pen was a microphone. I was spying to you.
And then does it to him again.
But the casualness of which he does it is so funny.
It's very offhand, and that's a brilliant way for him to handle him in the fact that, oh, no, it's, standard operating procedure, but you're a spy now,
But I mean, even beyond the Isabella Gianni of it all, I feel like that's one of the things that really drives the wedge in between the two characters is that Grodin takes him seriously, quote unquote.
Yes.
Which makes Hoffman feel like, am I better than him? Could I be a major player? Is he holding me back?
I will say, I understand that this is crucial to the Hope and Crosby thing, right? They do need to have their second act divide, but because the first act is so good at selling me on them, I don't like it. And maybe that's my problem with the second act. Like, and it's
you
not
want
a huge
them to be
problem.
friends.
I want them to be friends, but also like I'm so in on their dynamic. Them disrupted is less interesting to me. Like I wanted more of their dynamic, right?
The concert scene is great. I mean, like just Beatty floundering with his pre-scripted crowd work, even if they don't respond the way he wanted them to, And
it was like the Bugs Bunny cartoon where the crickets, shh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, he says, I'm going to play some songs by a couple guys you might have heard of named Simon and Garfunkel. Oh, you like them too? And there's nothing in between.
Some enchanted evening!
Right.
Smoke on the water!
The fact that people won't stop yelling out suggestions like it's some shitty improv show.
Those are some good ideas.
But then, as you said, Clint, Hoffman comes in, saves the day, and they kill. Like, this should be
it's
enough
such a
for
sweet
these guys.
moment.
They
so good.
killed, but that's not what they wanted to do. And to be honest with you, if you look back, Hoffman's performance in the piano, in the Italian restaurant, where if you look, he's got a tip jar full of money.
Yeah.
And people are liking him and responding to him. Maybe they're not loving him, and the waiter keeps crashing into him with silverware and shit.
Sure.
But, they, especially Hoffman, has met with a certain level of success. If they would just be happy with that, you get the feeling that they would have killed it at Shea Casablanca for the whole, whatever it was, 9 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it was they're going to do.
Whatever it is, right.
But it's this thing where it's like they don't want to be entertainers. They want to be artists, and they want to be looked upon with awe, So
let's talk about that for a second, because this to me is a very important point about this movie, is the fact that, I admire, the thing that makes them admirable is their passion. They are passionate about this. This is what they want. And it also stems into that whole Elaine May awkwardness thing, is you are sure they're never going to be big stars.
Their dream will not be realized. Yes.
Right. But at the end of the movie, I don't want to give away the end of the movie. Well,
go ahead.
It works.
It works. I think it's a comment also on, getting deep here, on popular entertainment. I think it's a comment on the music industry, which is obviously in the 30 whatever some years since this movie came out has just turned on its ear 4 or 5 different times. But the fact that, that nobody's ever going to say that they are incredibly talented and that they're brilliant performers, and yet they do succeed. I can remember the first time I saw the movie afterwards, I said, I don't know if they'll ever make a sequel, but by God, I'd really like to know what happened to them after this.
I think that's part of her sort of like her edge in this movie is recognizing there's not a major difference between the American government and the American entertainment industry.
Yes. Yeah.
That they are both just about big money bluffs, right? They're people faking their way and convincing people they know what they're doing to higher and higher levels of power. The ultimate joke that they finally get a record deal and the record deal is with the CIA is just so deeply funny to me. The only way these guys can get an album released is through like a government overthrow.
Yes.
Yeah. And David, the photograph of the Tower Records window, maybe that was Elaine May follow up, because isn't there a sign on there that says something about now at a reduced price?
Yes.
It's so funny. I was trying to find an image for my background, but this movie is not.
And yet here's this huge display in this Tower Records. God bless them. We miss them. So R.I.P.
Yeah.
So obviously there's still the government pushing it, but they've got it at a reduced price. So,
well, and it's one
place
of these
in the
things,
back in the discount rack like another can of peas.
We're jumping to the end, but it's like you start close up on, here they are in the window, the exact thing they dreamed of, and then when you pull out, you see the reduced price sticker, but you don't see them, and that's the last shot of the movie. The credits roll over that, and part of the beauty is you just imagine they don't care that the album isn't selling.
Yeah.
They wanted that.
What they care about is that it got in that window.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Sure. Yes.
They don't care that they didn't get it through talent, right? That they got it through essentially blackmailing the American government. They don't care that it didn't sell and no one likes it.
They don't want money. They have no. They don't seem to. They don't strike me as people who would know what to do with a lot of money anyway, right? Like, it's not like if they were suddenly rich, they would be like, "Oh, great, I want to buy this big house." They just, as you say, they want the ineffable cultural credibility of a Simon and Garfunkel. They
want to be seen as big deals, and that's why Hoffman is so susceptible to Grodin's, conversations. But that drives the wedge in them. I agree that this is the least exciting part of the movie. You get some fun bits like the Frewer Bermuda shorts thing, but then you.
Like a like the finale of Casino Royale, when they're running through the marketplace. And there's cowboys and there's, people in fezzes and
just the thing of like, okay, I'm spying on you. Oh, but I'm not. right?
Yeah,
The back and forth of that, like, oh, I'm doing something normal. This
Always
movie
funny.
crushes it. It's so funny. It's so funny. My God.
Ben liked Ishtar.
I liked Ishtar. I never saw it before. I mean, it was weird as hell.
Sure.
I was like, what is this thing? And I knew it was bad going into it, or at least that was
right. You knew the rap.
That's what everyone said about it. But there's so much great stuff in there. It's just, it's challenging. It doesn't hold your hand at all.
It doesn't.
So I saw this in this. It was going to be released on Blu-ray after being unavailable for 20 plus years, and then Sony canceled the Blu-ray release like 2 months before it was supposed to come out. Then Elaine May went and screened it a bunch of places. I think like that Jacob Burns Center screening that Richard Brody wrote about, this nice Second Street Y screening that I went to, and then it finally ended up coming out on Blu-ray a couple years later, and now it's back in the cycle of availability.
Yeah, I've got it. I bought it.
But at this Q&A, someone asked Elaine May, because this is the next main section of the movie, them with the blind camel, right?
Right.
Warren Beatty is told you have to get a blind camel, which is probably code that he takes literally.
Mm-hmm.
And so he ends up with this camel that can't see. And you watch the camel performance in this, and you just go like, how did they pull this off? She's not a director who relies on editing a lot, other than in montage. You're mostly having unbroken two shots where they're moving through a marketplace or an open desert, and you're not cutting around the camel, and the camel is somehow always doing the funniest possible thing at every moment, looking in the wrong direction, pulling them the wrong way. They're reacting to the camel perfectly. And someone in this Q&A asked her, how did you get that performance out of the camel? And she went, I don't know. I don't remember.
Cool.
And whoever was interviewing went, wait, but the camel hits like all these specific marks. They're very like impeccably timed jokes around the camel. You don't remember? And she went, I don't know. I probably just did enough takes until it ended up doing what I wanted it to do, which is a great explanation of how this movie costs so much money.
Yeah.
Elaine May in the middle of the desert with two of the biggest movie stars alive and a camel just saying like, I don't know. We'll just keep shooting film until the camel gets one take right.
The camel that they had so much trouble finding because you had to find
a blue-eyed camel.
You had to find a blue-eyed camel, so they sent whoever it was, the production guys, to go find a camel. They go to this.
Wait, you can't put contacts in a camel?
They're big. They're really big.
It would be like a teacup.
Okay.
So they go to find, and they find a blue-eyed camel. And this guy, I don't remember what the amount was, but he says, yeah. And they said, well, we're going to keep looking, like they're in New York.
They were trying to hardball a guy. Right.
Yeah. So, well, we'll come back. And so they can't find another blue-eyed camel. And they come back and say, okay, we'll take him. And they say, it's too late. We ate him.
They ate him. They did not realize how scarce blue-eyed camels are. And in the 4 days they went looking for other camels, the original seller ate him.
I will say, bad move by the original seller if they're rare. Eat another camel.
Absolutely.
Why are you eating the blue-eyed one?
Absolutely.
Hey, all right. Also, maybe they're hungry.
Well, they might have been hungry, and if so, that's how the cookie crumbles. I mean, that makes sense.
But that whole scene where they're haggling for it, he's supposed to ask for somebody named Muhammad. So he goes to the used camel dealership and says Muhammad, and like 6 guys say, right. Yeah, I'm right. Muhammad. And they said, I want to buy a blind camel. Yeah, I can get you a blind camel. Do you want a lame camel? And then the joke, would you like a dead camel? What kind of stock do they keep at this place?
That moment where the guys huddle with each other and they're like, wait, this guy likes shitty camels? Like, we're going to make $1 million. Can I just read an excerpt? This is from Peter Biskin's Warren Beatty biography, Star, which has some of the best writing on Ishtar I've ever read. And there's a good Vanity Fair piece from 2010 where they excerpt just kind of the Ishtar section of it. They wanted to shoot the film in Los Angeles. Coca-Cola had frozen assets in Morocco that had to be spent there. So Coca-Cola forced the movie to be shot in Morocco so they could spend that money, right?
And to be clear, Elaine May has made 3 small budget movies that are basically set in New York City. Like there is, I love her and she's so incredibly talented, but she's never made a movie this kind of scale.
No. So I'll just read this verbatim. It's supposed to be 10 weeks in Morocco, right? But at the time Ishtar began production in October 1985, Morocco was not the most hospitable location for a major Hollywood film, especially one that featured a rich Jewish movie star. On October 1st, Israeli warplanes had bombed the headquarters of the Palestine Liberation Organization close to nearby Tunis. A week later, most likely in reprisal, 4 hijackers from the Palestine Liberation Front seized a cruise ship, the Achille Lauro, and dumped passenger Leon Klinghoffer, a Jewish American, overboard into the warm waters of the Mediterranean after shooting him dead as he sat in his wheelchair. To make matters worse, the Moroccan government was involved in a protracted struggle with guerrillas at the Polisario front. The air was alive with frightening rumors. We heard there were armed Palestinians headed our way, recalls Silbert, who was on board as the production designer. There we were with Dustin, who sort of stuck out. According to one source, we had been looking for locations when this extremely agitated Moroccan general came rushing up. You have to wait for the minesweeper, he shouted. There are mines all around here. You could lose a leg. We had been walking for 3 days at that point. Everyone went white. Can you imagine if you're shooting the Morocco section of the movie first, and that's pre-production, that happens, what the mood must be like on the film?
Yeah.
And she wasn't getting along with
her stars,
the cinematographer,
and or Vilma Shigman, right? Yes.
And I mean, in some accounts that I read, she, her relationship with Beatty was starting to fall apart.
Beatty started pushing back and trying to, I think, kind of defensively to cover his ass, wrestle control of the movie away from her.
But it's the classic Beatty thing where the studio's like, well, do you want to fire? We'll fire her. And he's like, no, that would make me look terrible. No,
I'm a feminist.
I'm a feminist. Yeah.
Right.
I'm a liberal feminist.
Right.
I'll just try and ghost direct the movie kind of while the movie's happening, which is what he did with Bugsy. It's like he has this line. I think it's on Bugsy where he's like, yeah, no, I mean, if I'm in front of the camera so much, I don't want to direct. That's too much work. And it's like, he obviously does all the work anyway. Like, he just wants to boss everything around.
He had a line before Rules Don't Apply when people asked him why it took him so long to make a movie. And he said, making a movie for me is like vomiting. You don't want to do it. You try to put it off for as long as you possibly can. And then when you actually do it, it's restorative and you feel better.
But yes, I mean, that's a good line.
I think he does everything he can to avoid having to officially take that job title. Even if whenever he stars in a movie, he's going to end up doing a lot of the work. Right.
But like the story of this movie is really, it's like, you have these 2 massive egotistical perfectionist stars, this writer-director who's famous for kind of like, being very finicky on set and clashing with the studio and all that. And like Columbia's like, I don't know, guys. And they're like, yeah, we don't know either. And like, it just sort of happens with everyone kind of knows it's going to go wrong, it feels like.
Yeah.
Well, while it's all coming together.
Right. You have a major company who are neophytes in the entertainment industry who have bought this studio and want to Bigfoot everyone and be like, no, we make big movies. We give our stars what they want.
That thing where Hoffman's like, well, maybe don't pay me as much. And Coca-Cola's like, we're going to pay you more just for saying that. Like, just all the, well, maybe we shoot it in LA. No, absolutely not. The plane is gas. Get to Morocco now. Who cares if there's international conflict brewing across the entire world? Like, and it's just like, they should have seen this coming. They see it coming. And then the minute it starts being tense, the studio's like, well, this thing's a fucking disaster. Like, we got to bury this thing.
Right. I mean, this final section of the movie where it was supposed to be a much larger action sequence and Beatty essentially went to Elaine May and was like, I really don't know if you know how to handle this. You should let me direct it. And she pushed back. So they just shrunk the sequence to essentially one bazooka.
Yeah.
Apparently the battle scene confrontation was a huge breakdown. And yet they were still able to go back to New York
and shoot the best shit ever.
and shoot the best part of it ever.
Everything about the production stories, it has to be that the Sahara was last, and that's where everyone's not talking to each other anymore. Fuck you. Elaine May's like, can we move this sand dune? And people are like, what is she talking about? Camels are getting eaten, and you're like, oh my god. And instead they're like, anyway, let's get back to New York and knock out beautiful material.
But I think something about the tensions being that high by the time they get to New York gives it this weird depth of feeling. You know, I mean, there's nothing flippant about it. But I mean, Grodin is so much of this last chunk of the movie is just saved by the cuts to Grodin in that one office set.
So good.
I mean, he's at like a phone console that looks like it's out of a Laugh-In sketch.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it does.
And you imagine Elaine May just being like, more, just do shit.
Yeah.
Just be funny. He's so funny.
Well, they give him some of the best lines. I mean, the thing about the tell the camel to move 1 foot to the right. Tell the camel to move 1 foot to the right. Why? It's standing on my foot. You know, that, which is, I mean, kind of an expected thing, but it's still a great joke. And I have to go back because there's one thing we skipped over, and this was one of Hoffman's funniest lines when they were talking about Isabella Johnny's character, and he said, so she's a suspected terrorist, and he says, well, granted, but that doesn't mean she sleeps around.
Yes, God, so many of those little lines are just so good. But yes, I mean, this section, them being stuck, surrounded by vultures with a blind camel in the middle of nowhere, at least you're getting the magic back of these two guys together riffing songs, right?
Yeah. And that's when it starts working again. When they're out in the desert and they're crawling along, they just had this big fight. And, you know, this is where they're starting to they're getting the band back together, and they're crawling around in the desert, and they start songwriting. And I don't remember which one of them says it, but they say it sincerely, which is how all of their good stuff works. He says, this is some of our best work.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's that whole exchange with Hoffman telling Beatty to stop wearing the wrap around his head because it will dye his face. And he goes,
his face is going to turn blue.
Who cares? No one can see us out here. They constantly, in the middle of being caught up in this geopolitical nightmare, they keep on saying, like, God, if the press gets wind of this, it's going to tank our careers.
That kills me anytime they do that.
Yeah.
Just that the idea that the press is hounding them, like that it is following their every move, waiting them
this
for
kind of
to put
reputation
right.
can really sink some guys, you know?
Yeah.
Can we talk about the auction scene?
Sure,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I want to know what you guys thought of the auction scene.
I mean, I love it. I love the idea of shady, like, affairs happening in a sandy, hot desert. Like,
yes,
I think that rules.
It's funny,
but it also is a thing that hasn't aged well.
The gibberish thing doesn't.
That's
age
what I would.
That well, yes,
right. Because I would say, weirdly, the rest of this movie aged pretty well for a movie about Middle Eastern relations in the era of Reagan. I think it's, in certain ways, was very on point. And I feel like
because it's so scathing about America, partly. And, and, you know, it's about blundering, idiotic Americans on every level. The CIA, but also these guys.
Right, and the fact that it's on the side of a downtrodden people trying to overthrow an oppressive government. You know, it doesn't just sort of blame... paint with a wide swath that's sort of like everyone there is a scoundrel, you know?
Yeah, and I think you're right, Ben. I don't know if they could get away with that scene if it was a movie that came out today. But you know, there's that is not condemnation, because there's a lot of movies that are so close to my heart that wouldn't couldn't get made today.
No,
and
no, I don't think so at all. It's also thematically, them coming together again and doing a double act again is crucial. Like, that's what's fun
that's
about
the beauty
that
of
scene.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is my point. In the auction scene, they do that.
Yeah.
They work together. That's why this insanity of Hoffman pretending that he, speaks Arabic or all these different,
Berber,
but Beatty is working the crowd as an inside shield because he's still in disguise, and it works on a comedy logic level, which I think saves it. But it's the two of them working together,
right?
And
That's
then
why
I think
it's crucial, right? Yeah.
what I think is so telling is what was on paper designed to be a big action sequence gets reduced to one bazooka and one helicopter and Charles Grodin stressing out behind a phone, right? Marty Fried has now gotten the map in the mail. He's negotiating the terms. Just that moment is so incredible when he says, like, these are the terms. The government will be handed over to whatever Isabella Johnny's character.
Sweeping social reforms.
Sweeping social reforms led by Shira Assel. Also, Rogers and Clark want a live album with a full promotional support.
So funny.
And just Grodin going, easy, easy, we can do that. Then hanging up the phone and going, it's a disaster. I don't know what to tell you. They're trying to get us to release an album for
And then
these
he picks
people.
up the red phone. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good.
Yes, sir. Well, no, sir. Yes. Yes, sir.
And the Reagan picture in the background. But then it's like, what should be the big action sequence that would be where most of the money got spent, and for audiences would be like, who gives a shit? Instead is like an afterthought. And then the movie essentially ends with like another 8-minute concert.
Yep.
Which is good.
Which is, I love.
Yeah.
Perfect. It lets them do a victory lap. It's exactly what we want. That's where our bread is buttered, you know?
And you know what? I think I think it works. The battle scene or lack thereof works because for the most part, there's a threat of violence. There is a threat of death. I mean, even in the gunfight when they're running through the marketplace and stuff, I don't know if it ever shows anybody getting hit. I don't remember. That's why, for me, one of the shots that didn't work that I think they could have done without was Johnny's brother being basically eviscerated.
Yeah, I agree. With that.
Early on. But the fact that, if they had fired off the rocket launcher and blown the helicopter out of the sky, it wouldn't have worked tonally with the movie. And I mean, I don't know what else would have been in that big battle scene.
It really helps that they had to scale it down. And Lyle has the great line, I'm reading here verbatim, "Nothing ever happened to us, and now we're going to die out in the desert shooting at helicopters."
Yeah, and what is it? That ain't poverty. That ain't poverty. And they're laughing together, and the team's back together.
Yes. The entire American military station in Ishtar, in Morocco, having to come to the concert so that they get the best audience response of their entire life, right? And the Grodin sitting at the table, constantly trying to sell his like CIA higher ups that they've made a good deal.
I also just I think that someone making like a cop or a soldier coming up behind you and being like, applaud. I just think that's always funny.
So fun.
Just
it reminds me of like I've always been interested in just like the history of our government trying to break up the mob.
Mm-hmm.
And in Florida, the FBI ran a restaurant that the mob bosses, but like they had to like order supplies, they had to hire chefs, they had to design a menu. Just like, to me, that is just so funny. Like getting ringers to show up and like be really into this like live performance. Like that's hilarious.
And then what I find genuinely pretty poignant, the shot of Isabella Johnny crying and Marty Fried asks her what's wrong. And she says, I just think they're wonderful. And to a certain degree, despite the fact that the movie's gotten a little disrailed by the two of them fighting over her, right? And like, well, I have to bring this back to her. Can I be there when you bring it back to her and all this shit? What they really wanted is what she's giving them there at this table, which is someone looking at them as if they're important artists, right? The movie ends on this note that maybe the three of them are going to end up just being a throuple together, or maybe they'll just cash in on the fact that she liked their music for the rest of their lives.
That she's now a big fan.
Right, that's all that matters.
Right.
They got one person who looked at them the way they looked at each other. And then, you just have that beautiful transition from them singing Dangerous Business to the Tower Records.
Oh, God.
After being stuck indoors all winter, I feel ready to say good riddance. Yeah, I said it, okay? I said good riddance. I don't like the indoors anymore, okay? I was playing a goof earlier. in this episode saying that I've been going out and living life too much. I haven't. I've been doing nothing. I'm excited to get outside. But, gotta be honest, one thing weighs heavily on my mind. I have not been looking forward to getting the plants in shape. It has been an all-consuming anxiety of mine. What am I going to do about those plants? How much effort am I going to have to put into maintaining them? Because I obviously have a green thumb. I'm infamous for my green thumb. There's a reason they call me Green Thumb Griffey Nooms. But, my thumb is, it's sore at this point. It's hard to see the green through the black and blue. So I could use a hand, and that's why I love Bloomscape. Bloomscape makes it easy to find the perfect plants for your space and keep them growing all year long, okay? Like, here's the deal. Bloomscape delivers healthy plants right to your door, plus all the grow-how you need to help them thrive. You find the perfect plants for your space, whether you got tons of light or hardly any. Thousands of people have already upgraded their spaces with beautiful indoor plants from Bloomscape, and now Bloomscape is taking it outside with their new outdoor bloom kits. They sent me a cactus. That's what I asked for. I said, I want a cactus in a red pot. It seemed funny. It felt like the funniest plant for me to get. And I stand by that. I think it was a funny choice. But gosh darn it, if I didn't fall for this spiky little sucker. They got me in the heartstrings. It's nice to have a little thing to care for, even if it's a prickly cactus. It was easy. It was very easy. Selecting, and it was nicely packed. I received it quickly, and I had all the instructions and the guidance for how to take care of it on a regular basis. And someone like a cactus is pretty low maintenance if you're someone like me who is not good at handling anything. So I'll just say the new outdoor bloom kits from Bloomscape for any of you folks who perhaps have a little backyard, a little patio. It's the easiest, most convenient way to get growing. You shop a variety of young plants, accessories, tools, and supplies, everything you need to get your patio or porch springtime ready. Bloomscape's patented shipping technology, this is what I was talking about, makes it one of the few who can deliver happy, healthy plants of all sizes across the U.S. I can attest to that. This was the happiest cactus I had ever seen coming out of the box. And Bloomscape will ship at the perfect time to arrive after the last winter frost, so your plants grow healthy and strong. Bloomscape's bloom kits are completely customizable, mix and match sizes and colors, and since no two plants are alike, Bloomscape makes it easy to filter plants by how much light or attention they'll need. For me, almost none and almost none were my answers. Bloom kits come with a mix of annual plants suited for your environment, and the Grow How team is always available to answer any of your plant care questions. I hope everyone's listening to this right now because this section is mandatory. I'm giving you an opportunity to get 15% off plant orders of $100 with promo code BLANK at bloomscape.com. That's 15% off plant orders of $100 or more at bloomscape.com. Promo code BLANK. Get yourself a gosh darn cactus. Now let's talk about
David Putnam,
the way
baby.
This movie sort of got sandbagged by David Putnam. Do you want to lead this, David?
David Putnam. Of course I do. David Putnam. So David Putnam in Britain, a legendary film producer. I believe he's a lord now. He was, he's a sort of an esteemed, he produced, what did he produce, Griffin? Bugsy Malone, obviously Chariots of Fire. That's his biggest hit. Midnight Express. A lot of like big British movies in the 70s
Alan
and 80s.
Parker. Yeah.
Yeah. Alan Parker.
He's a lord now?
He's a lord now. Yes.
What does that mean?
Well,
Lord of what? What is he a lord of?
Classically, Ben, in Britain, like lords were like, aristocrats, like they were like landowners and you would pass the title, right? You're like truly your classic aristocrat, right?
Uh-huh.
That has mostly been done away with. That's gone.
I should hope so.
So now lords are basically it's just like you're like a fancy person who's done well in life, it's decided, and you get to sit in the House of Lords and like
it's like lower than being knighted, being a sir, but it's like one of the honorifics, right?
Well, it's a political role. You have a role in government. You're in the House of Lords. It's above
weird.
being knighted. Being knighted is just like, you're great. Congrats. Because this guy's probably also been knighted. Oh, he has a CBE. Okay. He didn't quite make knighted, but close. But being a lord is like, that means you are politically involved enough that you want to sit in the House of Lords and like listen to people read laws and be like, yes, no, anyway.
Okay.
He's a lord.
Well, this is my question for you then, not to get off track, but I need clarification on this.
Yeah.
How would you know all of this? No, I'm not doing that bit. I'm not doing that bit. It's a serious question.
Okay.
Christopher Guest also has lordship, right?
Yeah, he is a hereditary lord. Right.
Okay, so that's my question. So some people are given lord as a title because of what they've accomplished in other fields, and other people have it passed down because of family lineage?
It used to be the Christopher Guest thing, where it was...
Okay.
But in 1999, if you look up Christopher Guest, it makes it clear that those seats were essentially abolished. So he is no longer, I believe he is still a baron. He still has like a title, an honorific title, but he does not get to affect the laws of Britain anymore. Not that I think he ever made a big effort to do that.
But here's the question. Could I be a lord of something?
If you work hard enough.
I am.
You are? You're a lord?
Yeah, I paid $50, and you think I'm kidding?
I don't think you're kidding. I'm just amused.
I've got this little tiny piece of sod, and I've got my lordship papers that I sent. Actually, it was a birthday gift that my wife got for me. But the point is, Ben, this, you said, well, as it should be, they didn't abolish it that long ago, up until recently. And a lot of it, at least in my interpretation, was economically driven because, these people had to give up their properties, had to give up their castles, and had to give up all the. That's how I was able to buy my 1 square foot of sod.
Hey, congrats. I mean,
not bad if you
have
can
you ever
get
gone
it.
to look at it?
No, I was going to, but then that pandemic you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I'm sorry, spoilers. Well, let's say the 2 big Putnam credits that are important are he produces the movie Agatha, the Agatha Christie movie, which Dustin Hoffman comes in with a lot of script notes, and he's supposed to play a supporting part, and he makes himself essentially the lead of the movie. So Putnam has a bad experience with Hoffman. I'm trying to find this exact quote. He said something
I have the quotes. Dustin Hoffman is the most malevolent person I've ever worked with.
Right.
That is the quote. And he hates Hoffman, calls him a worrisome American pest. That's the other the other line he has for him.
Yeah.
He also hates Warren Beatty because Chariots of Fire went up against Reds that year for Best Picture, and it defeats it.
Was the underdog.
It was the underdog. It was the sort of surprise winner. It's not as good a movie, I would say, as Reds. But it's a. And
that was ugly too. That was an ugly public.
It was ugly.
Putnam wrote an op-ed piece for the LA Times saying why he thinks Reds represents the worst of what Hollywood is doing and overblown budgets and indulgence. Were you about to say this? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the line I liked is that he told the press that Beatty ought to be spanked.
Yes.
For the budget of Reds. The thing that is truly staggering is to think about that people at the time were like, ugh, Warren Beatty churning out, 3-hour, over budget Hollywood pap about famous communists. Now it would be like, Reds would be impossible. Even fucking Tom Cruise couldn't get Reds made. Nobody could get Reds made anymore.
But also, for how much people talk about how awful fucking Oscar season politicking has become, in the early 80s, a producer of one nominated movie wrote an op-ed piece slamming another movie without ever identifying that he was the producer of a film up for the same award.
Yeah. And Elaine May said in one of those retrospectives you were talking about from just recently that she said he was a putz. And she said, unfortunately, back then, because he was British, when British people spoke, we have this tendency to go, oh, he must be telling the truth. That must be really real.
Yeah, he sounds so smart. Meanwhile, they're not smart at all.
And meet the new boss, completely different from the old boss, obviously, because, he'd been buddies with McElwain. And you've got another who to me is, and I hope I don't offend anybody in his family, another putz was Faye Vincent, who was like a VP at Coca-Cola or something, and was over.
He's the one who fires. He eventually was a famously bad commissioner of baseball.
Oh, terrible commissioner! My least favorite commissioner of baseball. But I mean, he was ragging on it too. He was not supporting it.
The thing is that Putnam comes in. He's only in charge of Columbia for a year because putting him in charge, as the what's his name, Biskin piece puts it, it was like making Jerry Falwell the mayor of San Francisco. Like, why?
Love that.
Why
line.
would you hire someone who's like, Hollywood movies cost too much money and are stupid to run a Hollywood studio? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So he's out of the job within a year.
Well, he was coming in to cut budgets. Right. He was coming in to cut budgets and stuff.
But he also was grandstanding. I mean, he was coming in and saying, like, this town is rotten. Detroit has a crime, a cancer. That cancer is crime.
Yeah, like, how are you going to form relationships with the people who make movies in Hollywood if you call them all assholes? Like, this is not, you're not a fucking cop. Like, you have to, like, make movies. Anyway, he comes in and he apparently made some sort of fuss of like, well, I won't talk about Ishtar because I've had my clashes with Beatty and Hoffman. But then that just looks like he's burying the movie because he's essentially saying like, well, I can't say what I think of the movie.
He did one thing before that. When he takes over and he does a big press conference and he's talking about tightening the belt and how Hollywood should be run. He goes like, we're going to change things at Columbia. Like, for example, Columbia just wrapped production on this movie called Ishtar, where Warren Beatty, Dustin Hoffman, and Elaine May got paid $12 million in the desert. That is out of control. It ran amok. It was over schedule. We're not going to make movies like that anymore. That having been said, I will be taking no part in the post-production process. They're on their own.
Right.
So he sort of said, like, he pointed it out as this is the poster child of what I'm trying to stop from happening again. That having been said, all the best. If the movie fails, it's on them because I'm not going to interfere an iota. And then he stops talking about it. But it immediately puts a bullseye on this movie's back, which added in with the fact that like Beatty had always been very hostile towards the press, wouldn't let press visit the sets of his movies. It just all of it was sort of mounting against this film.
He also didn't Putnam also say, I haven't seen this movie and I never will.
Yes, he openly admits he never saw the movie.
That's the whole story of Ishtar, right? Is so many people like, oh God, that thing stuck. Did you see it? No. Why would I watch Ishtar? No. What do you mean?
Yes.
And I'm not saying I don't think it's a perfect movie. It's not my favorite Elaine May movie, I guess, although I love all her movies, so like who cares? But it's pretty terrific and interesting and unusual, and it's got these movie stars that I love, like at this, right? Like
I wish more movies were like it.
Yeah, I mean, I wish Elaine May had made 10 more movies. Like, look, maybe she just hated it, and I sympathize because yes, there's all these stories of, oh, this was over budget. No, like, she was clashing. But like, as we've talked about on this podcast and on this miniseries, like that's the story of so many directors. And, she's being punished for being a woman and for being, I feel, Griff, we've litigated this to death, but right? Like, I mean, this is the oldest news.
I'll say I've repeated this in all 4 of these episodes at this point, but it's a necessary thing to repeat. So at this 92nd Street Y, I think someone asked her about the feeling of like being put in movie jail and never being allowed to make another movie again after Ishtar. And she said, I could have made another movie. Like, maybe I couldn't have made exactly what I wanted to make, but I got offers after Ishtar. There are people who offered to produce things that I had written, wanted to take them to screen. I just didn't want to deal with it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a wrenching,
Right. Maybe I could have had an ideal career, but very much I chose to not give a shit about film directing anymore because who cares? She's also the exact same person who broke up Nichols and May at the peak of their success because she was bored with how good things were. So, I mean, she very much is a difficult person. Almost every director we've covered on this podcast is a difficult person. Right. Almost everyone who gets to this level of a career is difficult, eccentric, weird, ornery, antagonistic in some way. I think what is different is how much less it was tolerated with her and how much more it was questioned with her. Whereas with male directors, it is very often seen as being part and parcel with their genius.
Right. Because there were very few other female. I mean, maybe you could say Streisand, maybe.
But Streisand was always, even if her movies were successful, she was always lambasted for she's difficult, she's egocentric. Sure. These movies are so big.
Yes.
So what I'm wondering is it fair to say that the criterion for being a successful director is part artistic, but also part management, and that there's absolutely no question about her artistic skills, her creativity, her humor, but how much of the job is management, how much of the job is running the production? And my follow-up point is this: is that the way it's supposed to be? Is that not the job of producers? Which gets back to my original point, is I think Beatty's the one that dropped the ball. I think it should be laid at Beatty's feet.
Yes. As funny as he is in this movie, he's the villain in that he's coming in saying, Elaine, I'm going to take all the bullets for you.
Right.
And then the second they start, or whatever, early into filming, he's like, I don't get what you're doing here. Should I take over? He fails in that role. Because he says in interviews, it's in the Biskin stuff, where he's like, she's never had a good producer. I can be her good producer. Like, she never had someone, sticking up for her to the studios. And then he fucking blew it.
So my question is, does that then also mean that Beatty erred in selecting her to do this movie? Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I think, look,
it's movies. Like, a lot of them I feel like were a pain in the ass to make, but at least the movie's there.
It's also one of these things, like, as much as the premise of this show is kind of auteur driven, I feel like we constantly try to frame the conversations around how much these things are collaborative and how much the best elements of movies come out of friction, people coming in with different ideas than what the director intended or what the script was originally meant to be, and all that sort of stuff. That's part of the soup. I think she's an antagonistic person, Elaine May. I think that's part of the friction that drives a lot of her creative work. I think that's tolerated far less from women, and I think in a way that I find personally respectable, but it was absolutely disastrous to her career when you talk about management versus artistry, Clint, is she just had zero interest in playing the game at every single point in her life. She just doesn't care. She tells people exactly what she thinks. She doesn't finesse things, and she will just go to her grave with what she thinks is right. And I think that just made people go, like, not worth it. And I hear these stories, you read these stories about Beatty questioning her and Vittorio Storaro questioning her and all these people, and it does feel very similar to a thing I've experienced a lot on sets with female directors, where I just see them be given a lot less latitude and a lot less faith from their mostly male crews. Regardless of what they have or haven't done up until that point. I every time I've worked with a female director, which I've gotten to do a lot on television in particular, I will see those conversations where a female director goes, and here's how I want to break it down. The camera's here, the shot's here. We do this first, we do this second. The director walks off set, and then I hear two crew guys going, she has no idea what she's talking about, right? That makes no sense.
Okay.
And I just never really hear those conversations with male directors. So I think the combination of being so strong-minded in what she wants to do, so unconventional in her process, being someone who doesn't mince words and doesn't suffer fools, and getting into very unwieldy, bizarre, ambitious productions with big egos, it's just a perfect storm for people to be like, not worth it, I do think she could have made another movie again if she wanted to, but I think it's a combination of maybe I just know at this point it wouldn't turn out the way I wanted to, or they won't let me make the kind of movie I want to, and life's too short, and why not just put on a play off Broadway?
Yeah, and I appreciate that about her. I admire that about her. I think
legend, we stand.
Sticking to your guns and not worrying about the commercialism or anything else. And like I said, it's one of the things I love about this movie is the chances it takes, and tries to do something a little bit different. I always think, God, what if That's why you blew me away with the whole sequence of filming thing, because I've always said, what if she had been allowed to, or had felt like doing the Ishtar part as brilliantly as she did the New York part, where she had control of a handful of actors in a setting that she's familiar with, New York and entertainment and stuff. And, you know, and the fact that they did them in the sequence you said absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest what if for me in the movie is just if she had taken Hoffman's note of, I think it should just be the New York stuff. I think you should rewrite the script and it should just be a character piece about these two guys doing music. That's the huge what if.
She wanted to go to the Middle East. She's interested in this.
Yeah, but Beatty didn't do that.
No, Beatty supported that being her instinct.
Yeah, but I don't think Beatty got it. You know, she wanted to call it Road to Ishtar.
Yeah.
And Beatty is the one who said, oh, no, because then they'll compare us to Hope and Crosby. Well, yeah.
Right.
That's what you're doing. I don't think he got it.
I think it's a weird fucking movie that could only come out of this many strong personalities at this very specific point in all their careers, having their own motivations and meeting somewhere in the middle in a way that everyone else viewed as calamitous. And I think with time has sort of been reclaimed as, you know, if not an entirely great functional comedy, an incredibly interesting one with stretches of absolute brilliance.
I will say people are at a loss if they never see it.
Yeah, it's
agreed with that too.
Absolutely worth seeing.
Highly worth seeing.
If you care about movies, if you care about comedy, it's an important film.
And if you care about any of these actors, and Elaine May, obviously.
Yeah.
But let's play the box office game,
yes.
Please, Griffin. I'm begging you to play the box office
game. It was supposed to come out Christmas. It got pushed back because of editing. It comes out in the spring. May 15th, 1987. May was May that year.
It was. But it's also, this is long before May is a bustling time at the box office. You know, the summer has not yet started. So this is kind of a dead time at the box office. It should be dominating.
But the target had been on their back for a long time in the press. Then they do a test screening and it kills. And Columbia debates whether they should double down and try to promote it even harder. They kind of split the difference. They do release it pretty wide for that moment in time. It does fairly well the opening weekend, right?
It opened to $4 million. It did not do well. No, this movie did not do well.
Yeah.
It opened to $4 million. It makes 15. It's out of theaters in a month and a half. And yes, it does open at number 1, but it almost was number 2 to
The Gate,
the number 2 movie at the box. The
Gate. Stephen Dorff, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. A Canadian horror movie from New Century Vista.
Yeah.
You know, that like, I mean, like, so like you don't want to feel the gate breathing down your neck when you're Warren Beatty and you're doing your first movie in 6 years. It was not a good look.
If you're Elaine May, you don't want to nearly be best at the box office by Tibor Takas.
That is the name of the director of The Gate. Yes,
Tibor Takas.
Tibor Takas, who directed the pilot of Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Correct.
So we stand.
Really?
Yes.
Yes. He also seems to have done. He did the Gate sequel, The Gate 2, Trespassers.
Well, of course.
The Gate 3, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, he did 90s Outer Limits reboot. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, number 3 at the box office, Griffin. So The Gate's number 2. Number 3 is a comedy starring a comedy star of the 80s. We discussed him in our Zemeckis series, this actor, obviously.
Because
collaborated with Zemeckis.
Is it a Hanks movie?
Not a Hanks.
But he did collaborate with Zemeckis.
He certainly did. On a very successful series of films.
On a very successful series of movies? He's not Michael Douglas. DeVito.
No.
What?
Come on now.
A
series of films
Michael
by
J.
Robert
Fox.
Zemeckis. Michael J. Fox.
What am I thinking? Mikey J.
This is one of his comedies where he's a wise ass.
Is this Secret of My Success?
It's Secret of My Success. Yeah. The Secret of My Success. Mm-hmm. Herbert Ross. Mm-hmm. Have never seen.
With a great theme song.
Great theme song. Okay.
Never seen it either. I've been watching a lot of Siskel and Ebert worst of the year episodes on YouTube recently.
Did they bag on it?
They bagged on it. They said they found that film repellent, but they also the entirety of their 1987 worst of the year episode was them just drum rolling up to Ishtar. It was insane how hard they bagged on that movie. But yes,
Rosenbaum talks about how Ebert kind of hated Beatty's whole thing and his reluctance. The press were like just sort of cut off, and maybe that played a role. But number 4 at the box office, another comedy with a new star who's coming over from television.
A new star coming over from television
coming over from.
Am I allowed to play?
Oh yeah.
Yes, of course. I mean, you were there, Clint. I was a year old. Griffin is a glint in his father's eye.
-2. Is this a Ted Danson movie?
No. This is a guy who next year is about to have a sensational hit.
1988.
This year, though, it's like this is a movie I would say mostly forgotten, was not well reviewed, but was like a solid hit. And it's this actor and a female star who's like also I would say kind of on the up and up.
And the next year,
she just had a big hit.
The next year he blows up.
The next year he has his smash sensation.
Right. So it's not Robin Williams. It's not Ted Danson. Is it someone whose TV show was in the 80s? Like, are they on TV at this point in time?
They are. I mean, people forget, of course, that he was a big TV star, but he was.
Yeah.
Won an Emmy.
It's not Bruce Willis, right?
It is Bruce Willis.
It is Bruce Willis?
Blind Date.
It's Blind Date.
Blind Date. You caught me off guard there by thinking of him as a comedy star, but of course.
It's the thing. But I mean, before Die Hard, Bruce Willis, obviously, he's the guy from Moonlighting,
Blind
right?
Date.
First and foremost. Yeah. Blind Date. Never seen Blind Date. What if there was a blind date, right? Like, that is the premise, right?
What if the date were blind?
Phil Hartman sets him up on a blind date with Kim Basinger. Like, I don't think there's a lot. I don't know what it's about.
It's Blake Edwards, right?
It's a late Blake Edwards movie.
Right.
Yes.
Bruce Willis did 2 Blake Edwards bombs before he got the life raft that was Die Hard.
Yeah, Sunset is the immediate follow-up, right? That's another Bruce
His
Willis.
weird period gangster comedy.
Right.
Yeah.
Willis. Anyway, so that's at number 5, Griffin. It's one of the biggest hits of the year. It's an action movie.
In 1987.
This series comes up all the time in the box office.
It's a Rambo?
Maybe we should do it. No, but maybe we should do this one on the Patreon, Griffin. We never talk about it.
Do you know what? It didn't premiere this weekend, did it?
No, it's been in theaters for 11 weeks.
Wow.
I think I know.
Take your shot, Clint.
Lethal Weapon?
It's Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, comes up a lot.
Wow.
Comes up a lot. This or the sequels, Griff. They come up a lot.
When movies used to be in theaters for longer than 4 weeks.
I know.
They just run and run, especially this one. This was a March release, right? Like, I don't think anyone thought it was going to be such a colossal hit. It made $120 million. It's only made 57 now. So it's got another... it's going to double its gross over the next few months.
Wild. The argument against doing Lethal Weapon as a franchise is that Dick Donner is kind of coverable.
Yes, that's true. Yes, that's true.
It's a more contained filmography than I thought. I've been watching the multiple cuts of the original Superman movie recently.
Hell yeah.
And it made me realize that Donner's kind of an interesting guy to put on the chart for some point in the future.
Have you done Blake Edwards?
No, Edwards is too many. Clients.
Edwards is like 67
too many movies.
We put him on our March Madness bracket and let people vote for him last year, but we kind of sabotaged him because we were like, we have no idea how we could do it. He made so many goddamn movies.
Could you just do the Pink Panther movies?
Well, yeah,
we
you
could
could
just,
do something like that. But he quietly just made a bunch of noir movies in the 50s. He was just around.
Oh God, listen, he was one of the earlier directors of like Peter Gunn. He was a writer and director for the Peter Gunn episodes.
Griff, I do think Donner would be good. It's a bit of a slow middle there in between Superman and Lethal Weapon. But no, because there's the Goonies. I just don't like the Goonies, right?
I want in on that one. I'm claiming I want in on that one.
You want the Goonies?
Don't give that to another McElroy. Let me have that one.
I mean, there's Lady Hawk, which there's so much
oh
to
my
talk
God.
about with Lady Hawk. Donner would be
It's an
good.
interesting career.
I mean, he falls off at the end, but I still think it would be funny.
Yes.
Like, I still think like.
But it's like the last two are shrugs.
Yeah, but I think
Right?
Timeline and 16 Blocks probably are funny to talk about. Like,
yeah, and before they have Lethal Weapon 4, Conspiracy Theory, Assassins, Maverick.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, Laurie, none of these are masterpieces, but fun to talk about, probably.
All interesting. Yeah.
What's his blank check? I guess it's like the toy. I mean, it's Superman, obviously. Yeah. I mean,
I would argue it's kind of the Lethal Weapon sequels, but also, right, Superman is and it isn't.
Yeah, and him being fired off Superman too. Yeah, look, I mean, let's do it. Why not? Let's do it tomorrow.
Yeah, tweet at us. Let us know what you think.
And the only other thing we have to do, Griff, we're wrapping up here, but we gotta. I mean, it's short, but you should rank Elaine May. I actually had a lot of trouble with this because I like them all.
I do too. Let's just say to Ben's point, if you want us to do a Richard Donner miniseries, please tweet us #DonnerParty, and let's do.
But bring your own food.
Yeah. Let's do our May rankings. I think I can do this. It is difficult.
It's difficult because I don't want anyone to feel bad for being in last place. That's all.
Right. The difficulty for me is I think Heartbreak Kid is her most kind of perfect whole film.
Yeah, sure.
But the stuff I like in Ishtar, I like so much that
so
if
we're going to have a very different list, I can tell.
If we're talking about favorites, and that's all it is, I'd probably go Ishtar, just because I watch the first 25 minutes of this movie several times a year.
It's very good.
It's really a touchstone for me. I go Ishtar, then Heartbreak Kid, then New Leaf, then Mikey and Nikki. But she's made 4 great movies.
I'm the same, but I flop the first and last, Griffin. I'm Mikey and Nikki, Heartbreak Kid, New Leaf, Ishtar. But I don't want Ishtar to feel bad. Like
I don't want Mikey and Nikki to feel bad.
I don't care about the two of them. I would go with Ishtar #1.
Hell yeah.
So that breaks the tie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Clint, you broke the tie. And do you have Heartbreak Kid 2, would you
Heartbreak
say?
Kid
like,
2.
Do you remember Heartbreak Kid? Yeah.
And I like New Leaf. I like her acting in New Leaf.
She's so good in that.
And Mikey and Nikki I like, but I missed the jokes. I mean,
I agree.
Again,
that's my whole thing. I think it's a great movie. She's so good at comedy that I want her having jokes in her movie.
Nikki, you're making me forget the goddess.
Well, that's
fair
true.
enough. Yeah.
Very quickly, David, you were saying how difficult it was to find a picture of their album cover because you want it as your background. Here's a non-merchandise spotlight. The soundtrack for this movie was never released.
Nope.
Drop that soundtrack. It's a Paul Williams soundtrack for crying out loud.
Doesn't Dave Grusin also do some music on it too?
Yeah, exactly. Like, where is this?
Yes. And especially because the full songs were written, there have to be full recordings. They were filmed in full. There's a website I think called ishtarthefilm.com where you can download MP3s that are just the rips of the audio.
You own the website?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I structured my sentence improperly. I have something that I downloaded from a website called ishtarthefilm.com. They have a section that's the soundtrack where you can download MP3s that are just the rips of the audio from the film. So I have like a fake Rogers and Clark album where somewhere I got the JPEG of the album cover and put it on my iTunes. And it's just the 15-second fragments of the songs, which I put on as a playlist and listen to those 4 minutes over and over again. It's great. Awesome. I also did just order, I found one on eBay. There was a promotional 45-cent.
Really?
Oh, right.
That is just
back when they were hopeful.
Right, but it's not Dangerous Business. It's Little Darling.
Oh, yeah, with the closing credits music.
Yes, and then the other one is... Let me see what the other song is.
Oh,
here.
God, tell me the Mecca song is in there.
I think it isn't. It's Little Darling, and the other one is... This is saying it's Little Darling on both sides. That's not correct. I forget what's on the other side. But anyway...
it's Portable Picnic is on the other side.
Right, which is funny, but like, I'm just saying, Death Waltz Records, pick up the Gauntlet, release Ishtar on vinyl.
Broadway, do the Ishtar musical.
I mean, yes, also do
please.
Ishtar the musical.
It's ishtarthemovie.com, just FYI, if anyone wants to check this out. No,
it's a good website.
It's your website. You should remember this.
Clint, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Clint,
Oh no!
what a delight!
Thank you.
Very patient guest. Waiting so long
Oh, it
for
was
this
killing
episode
me.
to happen.
It was absolutely killing me. It was
You'll be
killing
back
me.
for
I'm telling you.
for the Goonies. We can talk about the Goonies anytime.
Yeah. People should listen to Adventure Zone if they don't already. You doofuses, you should check out the Adventure Zone books, which you're very hands-on in helping adapt those. And they're awesome. With Carrie Peach, who's a great artist.
Oh, she's amazing.
And the Adventure Zone cartoon show will be happening on Peacock at some point, right?
So we got fingers crossed. We're working that. That's one of the things that kind of resonated when I was, doing a lot of the research, and reading about, the process. And I've heard you tell stories, Griffin, just about how stuff gets made. It's really fascinating. And
It is nonsensical.
You can't really talk about it, but I mean, all the way from, and I love that stuff. It's like, pitch meetings, and I find that absolutely fascinating.
But it's the stuff in between where you just go like, what? Why does this work this way? Why are these people asking these questions?
Oh, I have stories. Next time we're in a New York bar together, I will tell you guys some
That
stories.
is truly a thing to look forward to. Let's also announce our next miniseries.
That's the last thing we got to do.
Because at this point, we'll know who won March Madness, but we got one more miniseries we're going to do before whoever wins March Madness, and it is...
Which we're so excited that...
John Carpenter.
One, that's so awesome. I mean, like, are you guys not looking forward to...
John Carpenter.
That's going to rule. That's going to be so cool.
I have to admit, Ben, I was surprised that they beat
Gore Verbinski.
in the final two, but obviously
Absolutely.
up until that
I didn't see
point-
that coming at all.
No, but they kind of had the road paved for them because, I mean, them going up against
Both Spike Jones and Ernest Dickerson in an historic three-way mega match.
and the
Oh,
Elite Eight,
man.
that was a cakewalk.
Yeah, totally.
my
Totally.
God.
Totally.
Yes. But let's say someone who is not in the March Madness bracket, but we're covering next, is to date still the youngest director ever nominated for an Academy Award, a record he is very likely to hold for a very long time, if not indefinitely.
I don't know. Yeah, not a lot of 22-year-olds going to get nominated for fucking Best Director. Yeah,
No.
definitely.
You want to talk about major success at the beginning of your career, and a career that I
a
think
series
because
of
of
blank checks? Yes.
yeah, the weird directions it took later on, despite the fact that he died far too young and far too soon, has not necessarily been reappraised in the way it should. We're talking John Singleton, baby.
That's
Wow.
right.
Another one we've just been long.
Oh, man.
A
Yes.
long mulled mini.
So excited.
It's going to be good.
So excited.
We're
Get to
going
talk
right.
John
Only
Singleton.
90 kids will understand. I mean, I
Yes.
know that, he made movies past the 90s, but whew.
Well, and one of them finally lets us talk about the Fast and Furious franchise proper on this podcast. We should mention we have a special one-off next week, right?
Do we? No. Do we? Oh, yes, we do. That's right. We do.
We do.
We
That's
do.
right. That's next week.
We decided this was a short miniseries, Elaine May. We thought 4 was the shortest miniseries we'd ever do. And then we said, what if we did an even shorter miniseries? Next
About a
week,
great director.
we are doing our first ever one-episode miniseries on an important American director who has only directed one film. Ball's in his court if he wants his miniseries to continue at a later point in time.
And we'll have to cover it.
We have to. At this point, we are beholden. Next week, we are, of course, talking Joseph Gordon-Levitt's Don John with the boys themselves, Sean and Hayes from Hollywood Handbook.
I mean, we all knew that this was coming on
It was
Blank
inevitable.
Check.
It was inevitable. David's been pushing it for years.
I've just been like, when are we getting the boys on to
Yeah.
talk John? And it's going to happen.
My boys, my ride, my
Yep.
porn, my girls. That's what David says every
Everyone
night.
loves a happy ending.
Yes.
That's the tagline for Don John.
Bizarre.
We're gonna dig into it, guys. That's next
Yeah.
week though, and then
Hollywood
Singleton.
Handbook, Blank Check, crossover, then Singleton, and then whoever wins March Madness.
Yes, but we're definitely doing a Space Jam 2 episode too.
Oh, yes, Space Jam: A New Beginning with James Newman, my brother. Thank you all for listening. Clint, thank you for being here.
It was indeed my pleasure.
Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to
I will,
Joe.
Griffin. Oh, I thought you were specifically speaking
No.
to me.
These are things I want to say to you, Clint. And
Yes.
it's very important that you process this.
Okay.
It would mean a lot if you could personally thank Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork.
Oh, Joe, Pat, you're gods.
And Clint, I really think it would hit home if you thanked Lee Montgomery and the Great American Novel for our theme song.
I would be glad to. Thank you.
And like it's maybe too much to ask, but if you want to maybe just start referring me as Chain Lord, like just throwing that out as maybe a new sort of moniker or title, that would be really cool.
Chain Lord? Chain Lord.
Lord of
Okay.
Chains.
I'll do that, Lord of Chains.
It's
It just really rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It's clean. It's clean. This is 2021 rebranding. Of course, Clint, just a few more things I'm going to just remind you of in passing.
Yes.
If you're looking for some real nerdy shit, I would recommend maybe going to blankies.reddit.com. If you're looking for some real nerdy shirts, I'd maybe recommend checking out our Shopify page.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media. And thank you to our editing team, Alex Barron, AJ McKeon, and go over to our Patreon where we're covering the Star Trek movies, where we're voyaging home at this point.
Consider me a Patreon.
Oh yeah. What are we doing at this point? It's April 25th. Yeah, we're about to. We're on the Final Frontier. The last one's coming up, Undiscovered Country. Yeah. Wow.
Well, let me just tell people this: Spock dies.
Oh,
He does. Rip.
Just wanted to tell you. That's the kind of guy I am. That's how I roll.
That's our episode on Ishtar. Tune in next week for Don John. And as always, there's never been a hit song with the word herb in it. Okay, I'm going to try this. This is going to be perhaps the most ambitious opening I've done yet, but I'm going to try it.
Go ahead.
It's going to be ambitious because I'm going to try to do it myself rather than asking you to do it. If you feel like you know how to accompany me, then you can, David.
I won't. I mean, I not out of grumpiness. I know I can't.
And
I don't
Ben-
have the words.
Ben, I just want you to place this at the end of the episode so people knew the risk I took. Okay?
all right.
Okay.